And you are watching another Blitz film review. He has that ability to, trust me, he definitely does. Just his ability to catch balls outside of his frame, his leaping ability, his ability to hang in the air, his yak ability, it's all there. Lowers his helmet, low man wins, bang, rocks a guy.
Hall running free, Brees Hall inside the 10, he's gonna score!
The corners all do their job. You know, if you look at the picture right here, lock.
3rd and 1. Stevens always drilled. What a great defensive play.
I don't try to Monday morning quarterback any of the reviews I do, and I'll try to be honest with a lot of the things I put up. And you are watching / listening to another edition of Blitz with a very festive Mr. Michael Nania. Nania, what's up, man?
I'm ready for some Friday night Knicks. I mean, this could be a huge day for me. I was born in October 2000. The Knicks have not been to an Eastern Conference Final since May of that year. So this would be the first time in my life that I've experienced a Conference Finals Knicks team. So this could be a huge night. But first, we have a much bigger event than Game 6 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. We're talking about the Jets' schedule on Jets X Factor.
Yeah. Well, quick before we get into that, before we get into the huge talk of the schedule, confidence. Are you confident in the Knicks tonight to pull it away and not have to force a Game 7?
I mean, that alone probably answers it. The hesitation. But to be honest, I don't know if I see them closing it out tonight, but I do feel good about Game 7 if it gets there. They just haven't, they lost both of the games there. The second one was a huge blowout without OG. Don't feel great about it, but I do think they'll finish it in 7 if it gets there.
I don't know if this is a specific Knicks reference here, but do you have the Mikes and Ikes ready for the Knicks game tonight? Lloyd wants to know.
Josh Hart, the Mike and Ike future sponsor. Yeah, I actually haven't had those before. Have you?
I don't know. I feel like I always got them in like Halloween and shit, and I'd be like Mike and Ike's and just like throw them away.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that you get. You're like, all right, that's garbage. That's garbage. Just wear the Hershey bars and the Kit Kats. That's all I was looking for.
Reese's, yeah.
Those two, yeah.
Alan Dodds, what's up, Alan? Yeah, Nani, we'll get into a lot. Like I told people, like, hey, I'm gonna have a month rotation. I'm gonna have you on once a month. This is your first appearance for your monthly appearance on the show. So we have to talk about quite a bit. I think the last time we talked was free agency before they even signed Tyron Smith. Like, I don't think they did anything yet at that point. We talked about free agency and nothing happened for the Jets, minus like signing Simpson and maybe it was Kinlaw at that point, maybe Fotu, but we're kind of sitting here like, not really much going on. And then like an hour after we get off, it's Tyron Smith to the Jets. So we're going to jump around a little bit. We're going to do some offseason stuff. We're going to do some draft stuff. We're going to do some schedule stuff. We'll go through the schedule. I don't know if you want to do like a win-loss or anything like that, or if you want to just talk about it and give like our general feelings on the schedule, where it's weak, where it's strong, our concerns, the bright points of the schedule. But overall, we'll kind of do chronologically. Offseason, again, this is your recap. Offseason thoughts, what they did, where they're lacking. How do you feel about the Jets roster before going into the draft?
Yeah, I was just looking back. So we did do the one pre-draft Cool Your Jets podcast when you came on. That was the last time that I think we talked. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it. I don't want to say it was perfect because there were some things that I think could have been handled better. The Bryce Huff situation. I think Franklin Myers' trade return was very underwhelming, and I don't think it was necessarily worth parting with him going into a win now season for what they got back. And I don't think they needed to do it contract wise, and they haven't used that cap space that they opened up yet. So not perfect. And, interior defensive line weirdly handled with letting Jefferson go, overpaying Kinlaw. So I don't want to sit here and say like, oh, that was a grand slam. I loved every single thing they did. But overall, the things that were most important, they nailed. They went all in on the offensive line. They got the number one guy we wanted in free agency. They filled pretty much they filled the whole starting lineup before the draft, doubled down on it, getting Fashanu, picking him over Brock Bowers, a thing that philosophically I'm very pleased with them doing that. And then, they get Mike Williams, that number 2 receiver we want them to get. They draft a receiver after picking offensive line first round. So they went all in on the key issues on offense. And that's something that I think most of us felt like they should have done last year, and they very strongly neglected it. So to see them come in this year and go all in on the key issues makes this an A minus kind of off season for me. I wouldn't go to A plus, but fantastic just because of those things.
Yeah, I think like if let's say you start off on an A plus, I think the handling of the defensive line, could bring it down to an A. And then some of the handling of like specifically more with the defensive line with JFM, like that could knock it down to an A minus. But overall, it's been obviously a good offseason for the Jets, and specifically in free agency. Because I remember at a certain point we were sitting there like in a Slack channel and all this stuff, like, hey, if they can just sign one of Tyron Smith or Mike Williams, like that would be a really big ad for the Jets. And they signed Tyron Smith, and like they're still visiting with Mike Williams, like how the hell is this going to happen? And then obviously, they're able to bring him in. They're able to bring in Reddick. But you kind of talk about the defensive line, like overall thoughts. Like, did we decrease in talent in our defensive line? Because I think you can argue, and I think that most would argue that Reddick over Huff. Like we're going to take Reddick over Huff. He's more productive, at least when he gets to the quarterback, he finishes. He has more forced fumbles. He's a little bit more well-rounded, or he's a lot more well-rounded than Huff. So I would say upgrade there. But then you subtract obviously JFM, Woods and Jefferson, and you add in Kinlaw, Fotu. And obviously, like I said, one Mr. Reddick, but you're losing JFM and Huff, and then those other two guys. So defensive line, what are your thoughts? Like kind of get into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I think the biggest X factor here is whether Will McDonald can take that leap. I think they're banking on that. And if he can be what they expected him to be when they took him, top 15 in the draft last year, I think they do have a chance to break even, because you bring Reddick in here. There's a high floor with him, consistent double-digit sacks. He gets, impact plays. He gets forced fumbles. He gets tackles for loss in the run game. He does a lot for you. He's balanced, better, well-rounded player compared to Huff. But once you took JFM out of the equation, that's when it, really became a risk in terms of, okay, Reddick is going to make up a lot of what we lost, but there's a lot more now with between Jefferson and JFM that you also have to replicate. And I think it's going to be on McDonald to determine how much of that they could be able to make up for it. When you look in the interior, I think it's pretty likely it's going to be a downgrade, but I don't think it'll be significant because, Jefferson was very good for them, but it's not like they were relying on a 1-2 punch of superstars. Like Quinn Williams runs the show in there. He makes a superstar impact in both phases. He draws double teams. He's going to make life easy for the other guys. But at the same time, Kinlaw is objectively worse than Quentin Jefferson. It's just not even close in terms of production or film or anything. Yeah. And you can't even say like, oh, he's coming to a great situation, because he's in San Francisco, which is the only place outside of the Jets that's probably better, a more favorable situation to be in as a D lineman. So that's going to be a downgrade, but I don't think it will be severe. So it comes down to McDonald. Is he going to make that leap? And if he can do it, and I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Bryce Huff, because that is a really high bar. I don't think we should start to underrate Huff now that he's not here, because like, efficiency-wise, in terms of pressure, there's no one better than him. So McDonald's not going to get to that level. But if he can be just, good to very good in, sliding to that role as a situational pass rusher, combined with Reddick being there, I think there is a chance they could come close to being the same that they were in terms of last year's pass rush. I mean, do you agree that they have that potential to break even? And how confident are you that McDonald can do what he needs to do to make that happen?
Yeah, I think that's like I think that's the thing that's underrated a little bit. Like we talk, and I didn't even mention it, so it's a good pull by you. It's like, hey, we're talking about these these additions and subtractions, but I didn't really mention McDonald. And I was on a podcast last night, and I think a fair expectation for McDonald this year is to get what 35% of the reps, something like that. And I think in that amount of reps, seeing him get like 5 to 8 sacks, I think that's kind of like on par for what I expect of him this season. I think he'll be really efficient. Like he played when he played last year, he was efficient. I have a review coming out of him. I thought he actually did pretty well last year. So another year in this defense, an actual chance to go out on the field and get legitimate reps. I think he will be productive. I think they could be a better pass rushing group than last year because I think Reddick, Bryce Huff, again, Bryce Huff might be a little bit more efficient, but Reddick finishes more. So I think that's a wash. If not, maybe let's just say it's a wash there. But then past that, you're adding another year experienced McDonald. And would you take like right now, and maybe this is a question asked at the end of the year, but the end of the year McDonald versus the end of the year JFM, like, do you have more faith in McDonald rushing the passer or JFM? Now, JFM is obviously a more well-rounded player, but I think McDonald can overtake him as a pass rusher because I think JFM was only an average pass rusher, right? Maybe a little bit above. I know he had some good pressure numbers and stuff, and obviously a really good edge defender. But in terms of pass rush, I think they could be even better than they were last year. It's not like Woods. Well, Woods was obviously good stuff in the run, but it's not like Jefferson was good stuff in the run. But I'm a little bit worried in the downgrade from Woods to Fotu, even though Woods missed half the year in the run game. But with that being said, like the Jets are expected to have more leads this year, so you're expecting teams to not be able to run on the Jets as much because they're having to pass the ball. Like, hey, if you're down 20-3, run the ball all day. Like we're fine with you having a 10-minute drive and killing it. So I think they could break even. So moving on from the offseason a little bit, again, we'll just kind of expedite ourselves through this. Going into the draft, I forget, obviously we spoke on the Cool Your Jets podcast, which is on another hiatus, which you guys will Ben will come on the podcast and be like, oh, I'm sorry, we haven't been on the podcast in 3 weeks. I promise we'll be more consistent, which it never will be, but it's okay. I think you might have been leaning team weapon. I forget exactly what you were thinking, but going into the draft, how the first 10 picks unfolded, where were you at it? Like, not exactly where were you at, but about 10 o'clock at night, Jets are about to pick, obviously the 3 big receivers are off the board. Alt's gone, Latham's gone. What's your mindset there? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, in the final weeks leading up to it, I did start leaning towards team weapon, but my strongest opinion was to take either the tackle or the receiver. Don't take Bowers. That's really all I was looking at. I did start to go towards the weapon though, and I wanted to see them trade up for Odunze if they could do it, which it seems like they tried to do, but the Falcons were just intent on taking a quarterback there, which no one really anticipated. So it seems like they did try to do that, what we wanted to see, or what I ended up leaning towards them doing. But I still was just either one of those I want to see. I just did not see the positional value of taking Bowers there. I didn't see in him a player who was special enough to overcome that. And that's not to say he's a bad prospect or that he shouldn't be taken first round, but it's just that's a huge leap in terms of a receiver or a tackle versus a tight end for a top 10 or 11 pick as it ended up. And for you to do that, you have to be, to me, just like a total slam dunk. And he's very intriguing, but not quite to that level. And then also just, we talked about the Jets being a win now team, and a lot of people were trying to say that Bowers would be the best win now pick. I actually thought it was the opposite of that because tight ends year one do not play well. Even guys drafted very high, the odds of them being anything more than like, here's 400 yards and a couple touchdowns for you, it's extremely rare. Even for guys who turn out great in the end, year one, you just don't get it from tight ends. It's a huge development curve. One of the steepest development curves out of any position, even compared to tackle and receiver. So even for year one, who helps you the most? I thought it would be better to have a tackle who's probably going to play half the season as a starter, or a wide receiver who has a chance to be your number 2 guy or number 3. Hopefully Williams stays healthy. So yeah, I just want one of those two positions. Don't take Bowers. He was on the clock. I expected him to be the pick, and he wasn't. They went the smart route with Olu. So I was definitely happy to hear that pick.
Okay. And then obviously after the Olu pick, and I know you said specifically like on the podcast that you weren't really like delving into the prospects until after, but after the Olu pick, I'm kind of sitting there and it's like, hey, I wanted the receiver. I think they needed to add more to the room because Mike Williams, you don't know exactly what's going to happen beginning of the season. Obviously, you don't know how healthy he's going to be throughout the season. So how are you going to transition at the receiver position? Obviously, it happens, third round. They trade up to the first pick in the third round. Thoughts on Malachi Corley as a player? Obviously, you looked into him. Thoughts on the pick, and then kind of like your reasonable expectations for him in year one. Because I think it was maybe it was you who did the article about Corley and his successful routes, and then the transition to the Jets offense. So I believe that was either you or Rivka. So go ahead and hit on Corley.
Yeah, I mean, I like the pick because I think it's very his play style is very transferable compared to other types of receivers. Because I mean, his playmaking ability, getting the ball, that's something you could trust him to do immediately. And it's obviously not that easy because it's not like every single great yak receiver in college is the same in the NFL. So nothing's ever guaranteed, but that's the type of thing that you could picture, like, okay, we'll run you some jet sweeps, we'll run some screens. And Rodgers likes to throw a lot of receiver screens. It's a big part of his game in the latter stage of his career. It feels like he can come in and make an impact right away. And down the line, he can develop into much more than that. Like, he has a better vertical game to give him credit for, contested catch game. Like you were showing it all on your film breakdown. Like, all those skills are there. He's not just, the gadget guy. He's not Braxton Berrios. Like, there's more to his game. But, in a few years, hopefully that can come along. But year one, right into this offense with, there's already a lot of targets that are going to go to Garrett, go to Brees, Conklin, Mike Williams, if he's healthy. Not a lot of opportunities go around. So a guy who you could just give some of those manufactured touches, I think, is very easy to put in your offense right away. And then in terms of the routes and stuff, I saw someone, forget exactly where it was from, but someone put up his route tree and his, percentage of routes, what he runs the most. And I compared that to what Rodgers does. And it's a really good match. Like I said, the screens, big part of Rodgers' game in recent years. He loves to audible, see a matchup he likes, just spit the ball out. Short crosser is a big part of what Corley does. That too, Rodgers likes. And then on top of that, Rodgers likes his go routes. That's kind of Rodgers' game. It's more so like, not that he doesn't go intermediate, but he likes to either be aggressive or be really safe. And Corley, his game kind of fits into that because he did run a good amount of go routes and vertical shots. So I think he's a good match for Rodgers and a player who could be counted on to contribute quickly.
Yeah, we're going to jump around a little bit too. We have some schedule talking here. We have Drew. If you hear my neighbor's doing his lawn right now, so of course, if you hear a lawnmower in the background, I'm sorry. Drew says, "What's up, guys? Big fan. Moving back to NJ. Can't wait to go to some games this season." We'll talk about the schedule in a little bit, like going through it. But Nania, you like bounce around. You're in Carolina. You're in New York. You're, I believe, in those two areas. So what's your plans in terms of like going to games this year? Are you getting to an away game? Are you going to the home opener? Like, what is your plans in terms of actually going to games this year after seeing the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole plan yet. I mean, I do think it's pretty likely I'm going to go to the Arizona game because Ben has a house out there. He's probably going to go to that game. So that one seems pretty likely. I mean, home opener, I've been to the last 3 at this point, so I'm pretty likely going to get to that one. And I mean, they have a 1-2 record in those games, but it might as well be 0-3. So maybe that's because of me being there, maybe not, but I'll be back. So hopefully that doesn't continue. So right now, those are probably the 2 I anticipate, but we'll see as the season goes on. I mean, I was planning to go to a lot more last year, but the home opener happened, and I just had no motivation to go to any games after that. So, but we'll see. I usually take it more like week by week. Like in 22, when they were surprisingly really good to start, I went to that Patriots game, bought tickets like 2 days before, and on the same day, I flew there and came back to Carolina in the same day. So, not the most fun game for that experience either. But.
Yeah, we hit up Carolina last year. I remember we got Nania into a bar, which is an experience. And then I was ripping some shots with Sabo. Sabo he can pound them. It was fun, but it was again. I'm sorry for the. Of course, you're gonna be able to hear that like right now, but I think when we go, well, I have season tickets, so I'll be going to every single game most likely. I might miss the Halloween game, unfortunately, against the Texans. But past that, I think I'm going to hit Jacksonville and maybe New England this year. But Jacksonville is a definite. Again, I'm trying to hit all 30 stadiums, and just like I was planning on going to Minnesota. Unfortunately, Minnesota's in the UK, so I don't know if I could pull that off. But nonetheless, Jacksonville and New England, for anybody who will be going to those games, I'll most likely be there. So hit me up. I put a feeler out on Twitter for like Jacksonville. And obviously you have a large contingent of Jets fans from Jersey moved down to Florida at a little bit of an older age. They can't deal with the shoveling snow and the cold weather. So it seemed like there's like a large like population of Jets fans down there that's going to be at that game. So I think Jacksonville might be, or it probably is a new spot. I'm like 95% certain I'm going to be in Jacksonville. But going back to the receiver position, obviously Corley. Now, I want to ask like 2 follow-up questions in terms of Corley, like expectations for year one. I know it's hard to put like, stats on it or anything like that, but like how big of a role do you think he's going to have in this offense? Like, is he going to be more of like a gadget guy who just runs some vertical routes? Is he going to have 800 yards, 500 yards? Like, what's your expectations there? And then in terms of the receiver group as a whole, like, do you think that kind of like layered, like, do you think that we need more? And do you think the Jets think we need more?
Yeah, I mean, I actually did do some rookie stat predictions recently, so I could tell you what I predicted for him. I mean, I don't think he's going to have a huge role just because, in a perfect world, everyone's healthy. I don't think there's a ton of targets left for him, but I think he'll be in there. What I had for him is 45 targets, 30 receptions, 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. On top of that, 10 rushes, 60 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. And I also think he'll be the kickoff returner because out of the guys on the team right now, he's probably my favorite option because like who else is he competing with? Like Gibson wasn't good last year outside the one play, but after that he had 5 fumbles. He really did not have another big return the whole year. So I think he's going to be the kickoff returner too. And that could be a big part of his role because I think kick returns this year are going to be overpowered. I think they kind of overcorrected these kickoff rules, and this year it's going to be really, we're going to see a lot of returns and they're going to be very productive, and then they're going to scale it back a little bit next year once they can adjust it. So I think kick returning is going to be key this year, and if there's one guy in this team I want to have the ball in those returns, it's probably Corley right now.
Yeah, I think I was on another podcast last night, and somebody in the chat asked me, like, "Hey, do you think Izzy is going to be a kick returner for the Jets?" I think I don't think so at all. Like, I think it's more similar to punt returning now, where you want a guy who is going to be more shifty than like necessarily long speed. So I think Corley is that guy. What games did Gibbs? I wish I remember. I'm on the stream. I wish I remember what games he fumbled in. He fumbled in the Buffalo game, the Chiefs game, the Eagles game.
There's the Broncos game, right? There was a muff punt that they did or they didn't get back. I'm pretty sure he had one in that game, though.
Yeah, and then there's one more. Okay, so there's one more I can't think of. But yeah, nonetheless, like I get we all love Gibson for what he did in
2 in the Broncos game. Yeah.
Okay. So you had two in the Broncos game. Like I love him for what he did week 1, but then past week 1, he didn't really do much of anything. Like he's not a guy who like, he needs to be on the field for gadget. He needs to be on the field because of his speed. So he's a guy I can easily see not making the roster at this point, especially if you're going to try to carry a Brownlee for his physical upside. If you're going to carry an Irv Charles for special teams, but do you think it's a position that you want to add to, and do you think it's a position that the Jets think they need to add to? Because obviously, it's kind of you're kind of in a conundrum because last year you roll into the season with like Allen Lazard as your 2, and then by the midpoint of the season he's benched healthy scratches for games. So do they think like, hey, Aaron Rodgers fixes everything like they thought he'd fix everything last year, or do they look at Allen Lazard and like, oh my god, like we finally realized somehow now, not 2 years ago, that this guy sucks and we maybe need another depth receiver? Or do you think they're just gonna like roll it with what they got?
I mean me personally, and I'm sure you agree, I think we would both like to see another addition because the way Lazard played last year, I don't care that Rodgers is back. He was probably the worst receiver in the NFL. So he's not a wide receiver 4 or 5 or even rosterable playing the way he played last year. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely like to see another addition. Obviously, a lot of the guys we're talking about are gone by now, the Tyler Boyds, MVS, but Corey Davis is still out there. So that's a possibility. I think Renfro is still available, right? Or did he end up signing?
I didn't see Renfro. No, it's Renfro still available. Davis is still available.
He's still available.
Past that, like, is there anybody else but Davis and Renfro?
Yeah, no, I guess not a lot of great options, but I would definitely like to see one of those guys just to give you some sort of floor because, like, with him, the floor is just as low as it gets. But what do I think they think? I don't think they're going to add someone. I do think they trust him just because he's Rodgers guy and that they're going to bank on him getting back to what he was, which, in Green Bay, when he was only getting 2-3 targets a game and he was the fourth, fifth target, he was pretty efficient. He made the most of his opportunities. It's when he's had to be relied upon more that he's played his worst. So I think they're going to bank on that, but I don't necessarily agree with it.
Yeah, I would like to see them add somebody. Again, Corey Davis as your 4. I think that's like a studly 4, to be completely transparent. I think Davis really even at first, and some people won't like this, but right now, is he a better receiver than Corley? Like, if you're going to take him on if you're going to take him on a dig, you're taking him or Corley. So he might actually out rep Corley. But in general, yeah, I would like to see them add something else, because past, Lazard again was a healthy scratch. Mike Williams, like, let's say he goes down again at some point, because obviously he's had this injury. If you're running out there and your 2 receivers are Garrett Wilson and Lazard, like, to me, that's not good enough for a team who wants to make a Super Bowl run. And there's these guys out there, Corey Davis for $3-4 million, MVS was out there. Like, I'm willing, I would like to sign these guys. I get maybe that it's more of a want than a need, but I kind of want everything we could possibly get for this year. Like, why not just load up as much as possible? Unless they're planning on using that cap space, then maybe they sign Michael Carter II, or maybe they extend somebody or something like that. And that's where that money is going. But yeah, interesting with this receiver position. And then we'll continue through the draft. But we'll kind of hit on the rest of the offense. In terms of wants versus needs, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you label interior offensive lineman right now, an extra interior offensive lineman, as an absolute need for the Jets, like non-negotiable, they have to add it? Or what do you think? Because right now it's ABT, who's been injured the last 2 years. It's Tippmann, who is coming off of his rookie year, good rookie year, but still rookie year. And then you have Simpson, who is, he's good. He was solid last year. And I think you definitely, you liked him more than you probably thought you would going into it, based on how you kind of acted on Twitter and like your articles. But their only backup right now is Schweitzer. So are they waiting for McGovern? Do you think they're waiting for Herbig to maybe get cut by the Steelers, waiting for camp cuts, or like, what are they going to do in interior offensive line?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a necessity to get at least one more. I mean, Schweitzer is a good interior backup, but he's all you got right now. So yeah. I mean, I was going to say, like, maybe they think Mitchell can make that move inside, but I don't think he's a candidate for that at all with the physicality in his game. Definitely. I mean, if you can't do it at tackle, I don't see how he's going to be able to block interior guys as a guard. So it's a necessity. I mean, hopefully they get McGovern back. He would be one of the higher end interior backups in the league. So I would think that's what they're kind of holding out for. I mean, maybe McGovern is trying to see if he could get a starting job and he'll come back if he can't. Maybe a situation like that, which was kind of what I guess Ashton Davis was doing. So maybe it'll go in that way, but definitely a necessity.
Yeah, and I want to actually ask you a follow-up question about the receivers, but I just didn't think of asking it, because I think it's a little bit easier to like take a deeper dive into guys with the analytics, because you could just, whatever numbers I don't know what you do. We're completely different realms. I have no idea what you do and what you type in and all that stuff. Like, I remember, like, specifically, I would ask you, like, and I figured it out, last year, but we would sign somebody, be like, hey, Nania, what games did he play the most snaps in? And I realized I can just go on his game logs and look at the snaps he played, but you'd go and do it for me. Like, I was such an idiot. But with that being said, like Renfro, like what is up with him? Because he was a guy who solid receiver for years, and then just dropped off out of nowhere. Like, is it an injury thing? Does he just suck? Like, is he not creating separation? Like, why is Renfro over? Because like, based on his career arc, like, again, you'd think he'd still be kind of solid, but he had like 300 yards last year. Like, he didn't do maybe 200 yards. I don't know what it was. He didn't do much. But what do you think Renfro would be like worth? And then the problem with Renfro too is like, thinking ahead now to this conversation, Corley's more like, you're going to see him in the slot a decent amount. You're going to see Garrett Wilson in the slot a decent amount. Do you want to add another like slot heavy type of guy into this offense? Probably not. I think Corey Davis is a lot better fit for what we need on this offense, because Corey Davis, like, we need an intermediate guy right now. And Garrett Wilson can win everywhere. I would say his weakest point of his game is vertically, but he can still win all over the field. Mike Williams can win mostly vertically. Corley is more of like a yak guy, and obviously a little bit more design guy. But like, guys for like that deep dig, like, that's Corey Davis. Like, he was an intermediate good receiver in my opinion. So I think he's a better fit. But in terms of Renfro, like, what the hell happened? Do you have any idea like what's going on with him?
Yeah, I don't know. It was mysterious, because he was like, he had a 1,000-yard season a couple years ago. Yeah. Not like, I mean, Derek Carr was there, but it's not like that was an amazing situation, and he was a 1,000-yard receiver. But then they get Devontae Adams, Josh McDaniels comes in. It just seems like he was kind of getting phased out. He did have a lot of injuries a couple years ago. Like, I think it was oblique, hip, ankle, like a bunch of different things going on. So maybe those injuries, none of them kept him out the whole year. He finished the season. So it didn't seem like any of them were severe, but maybe they did have some lasting effects on him. This past year, he played every game, but he just wasn't used all that often. So I don't know. It was I don't watch the Raiders, consistently, so I don't know what his film looked like. Maybe he's still just as good, but they just decide not to use him for whatever reason.
I was curious if you had
where
like,
you
any,
come
like,
in
separation.
if we get him, but I'm not sure in terms of separation stats. I haven't seen, but
I was curious.
It is odd.
Hey,
he's only 28, so.
Yes, I'm saying like he's relatively young. He had 1,000-yard season, 2 seasons ago, whatever you just said. Like, is he creating separation? Is he not used? Is he not utilized? Was it McDaniels? Is it Pierce Slasher? Like, what the hell happened to him? But I did miss the super chat, so I want to get to this real quick. From Nose Kills, who says JJ took a leap last year. Do you expect him to continue on that trajectory? You said his pass rush move set still wasn't great, I think. So I'll throw this to you first. What do you think about JJ and his trajectory to this year? Because, and I'll throw my 2 cents in really quickly, even though I said I'll throw it to you first, and then maybe I can delve deeper into it. To me, last year, he was a very good run defender, but I still think he's like an average pass rusher. And I have the review coming out of him. I don't know what the numbers indicate, but he had like 6 or 7 sacks. A couple of those were sacks that, like, if the pocket wasn't pushed all the way back into him bending the corner right there, he's probably not going to get the sacks. There was some cleanup sacks. There were some effort sacks, or there was a sack or two that was just straight up like schemed up. So I'm not saying that, like, I'm not trying to like disregard what he did this year, but I do think, like, 7 sacks that you cleanly beat your guy. There's no pocket pushed and you bend the corner and make a sack is a little bit different than, a 4-second sack and they're kind of running into you. And I'm not saying that was all his sacks. And transparently, I watched thousands of rep of so many players that I forget exactly all of JJ's sacks, but I'll do the review on him. But I think last year he was like a solid edge defender. I still don't think he's an elite edge defender, not yet. I think he's solid there. And I think he's an average pass rusher. Is that fair? Or am I being a little bit too low on him maybe?
I think that's fair. I think he's in the mold of one of those like playmaking pass rushers, more so. Like, for example, like picture what Bryce Huff is, kind of the opposite of that. Bryce Huff is consistent. He wins. He gets pressure. He wins his matchups very consistently. Jermaine Johnson, I don't think he was definitely much improved last year because as a rookie, he very rarely won. So he was improved, but he's still not a guy who wins super consistently. But he is a good finisher. He's fast. He's a great motor. He's lengthy. So he gets sacks. When he gets home, he gets hustle sacks. He gets hustle pressures and hits, like at the quarterbacks. Like we saw what he did with Josh Allen as a rookie. So he's a playmaker. Like, he stands out and he finishes plays. And obviously his run defense is great. But I think it is fair to say, and his pressure numbers and win rates and stuff like that do back that up, that he probably improved to like average in terms of like consistency last year, which is a big leap from where he was as a rookie, because he was frankly bad in those areas.
Like not everybody has to be Khalil Mack. Like I don't want people to think that me saying that he's a solid edge setter and a average pass rusher at this point is me discrediting him. Like if that's what you get, if you get a solid D end at pick 26 or 27, like that's a slam dunk pick in the first round. So don't think I'm discounting him, and he still has room to grow. But I do think he was an average. Like, I'm not watching him as a pass rusher like, oh my god, like I still saw some of the same problems as last year, like not setting up guys great, or maybe not having the best plan. And he's powerful and he has some good athleticism, but like he's not the most bendy, twitchy guy in the world. But like you said, like good edge defender, solid, decent pass rusher. But then he had the pass deflections, he had the interception. He makes that too. He makes big plays in big moments.
He had 7 pass deflections on top of forced fumble, pick 6, 11 tackles for loss. So like he makes those big plays when you have all the tools that he does. And there's a ton of value to that. It's just like down to down, consistent pass rushing. That's where you can still improve a lot. But I think that pick was always about floor. Like that's why they traded up to get him. Because I think you looked at him and saw there's a high percentage chance this guy's going to be a good starter for us. The ceiling, like, and we still have to see, can he become consistent enough to be a true dominant pass rusher. I think that's still up in the air, but he's lived up to the floor that he had. He's a great run defender, and he makes big plays. So I think that pick is already worth it. But we'll see if there's more room for him to grow.
It was like what was that guy in like 2013 or 14? It was like Coney Ely with all those pass deflections. Yeah, that was like ridiculous. Like he had like a couple of games in a row. It was like 2 or 3 pass deflections a game. And then he just disappeared off the face of the. I don't even remember where did we get him from, like the Panthers or something? I forget exactly where we got. Yeah. It was the Coney Ely throwbacks to the. Yeah, that's wild. But nonetheless, yeah. So I think he's a good player. And I think he can continue to prove on his pass rush. I think it's a thing where he has to again just have a set plan every time. There are some times where he just kind of runs in and tries to bull rush you. I think, and that's fine because. In year one, he'd almost like set up his bull rush late. This year, he's a little bit more decisive with his bull rush. So I think in his first year, he was below average. And then this year, a little bit more decisiveness, he became an average pass rusher, which again is fine. And I still think he can improve. But moving on from that, we go to the third. So we got the third round now. Did they trade down initially? Because they had like they had an earlier pick, right? And then they traded down. And then like they had a 4th round. No, because it was second. And then second, we traded up to the top of the third. We had to wait all the way through the third. We waited a good amount through the 4th. And they had like pick 112. And then they traded 112 for whatever it was. And then we waited like all the way till 120. And then that's where they grabbed Braylon Allen, right? Thoughts on Braylon Allen in the 4th round, right? What are your thoughts on him as a player?
Yeah, I like what I've seen so far. I mean, the pass blocking is definitely something that intrigues me. I know that's not the first thing that people think of with the running backs, but for me it is because we've seen so much bad pass blocking and we have a 40-year-old quarterback. I want every piece of pass protection help that he can get, and running back is a huge part of that. So he's got size. I liked a lot of the clips that you were bringing up. Seems like he has good potential in that area. But yeah, I like them between this pick and Davis. I like the emphasis on, power, downhill, kind of thumping mentality. And that's not even to say that's all that he is, but just in general, the mentality of kind of complimenting, you got Moses, you got Simpson, all these things kind of pointing you towards inside gap type running and complimenting it with these guys. I think they'll be a good stylistic complement to what Breece Hall gives you.
And then doubling down on the running backs. We'll skip ahead to that point. What are your thoughts on that one? Because I feel like you can have like your philosophy, your like philosophical differences in terms of like what to draft and all of that late. But before I even put my 2 cents in, they grab Isaiah Davis in the 5th round after trading back. And again, a part of the draft too, like that people don't necessarily think about. But obviously that it's in the back of their mind. But like, hey, they traded a 4th round pick for a 3rd round pick next year. Like that's big as well. And if you started like the 4th round and seemingly based on mock drafts and the streams I was on, everybody would have been happy with Jordan Travis and Braylon Allen in the 4th round. So the fact that they traded down, got into the 5th, still got some of these players, it was pretty good maneuvering to pick up some extra picks. And some of them I have a little bit of a disagreement with, but a few picks later they get Travis, which we'll hit on, and then they get Isaiah Davis. So thoughts on Isaiah Davis and doubling down at running back?
I mean, I don't mind doubling down at running back because they needed 2 running backs on the roster. They only had Breece and Izzy, who I don't even think should be considered a roster lock at this point. So I don't think there's anything that should have ruled them out from it. I know some people would like to see a veteran in that spot, and that makes sense. I understand that viewpoint, but I like going young at running back because if there's any position in the league that younger is better, it's definitely running back. So staying young, staying fresh at that position, I think is a good move, because as much as a veteran running back could be appealing because of he's experienced, maybe he's better in pass protection and stuff like that. If an old running back is still available at this point, he's probably really washed up, and most of these guys on the free agent list are. So, like, for example, Zeke, I know he signed with the Cowboys, but like, I don't want him and his washed up legs. Like, just I'd rather take younger guys, take a chance on them. So I don't mind it.
Yeah. It's and the way I phrase it is, some people like just again going on streams and stuff. It's like if I were to tell you in an alternate universe, we had, again, just live in this world real quick, we had Breece Hall, Michael Carter, and Izzy on the roster, and then we drafted running back in round 5, like, are we all going to lose our minds because we drafted running back in round 5? So like, what's the difference there? Like, I don't really see the biggest difference in drafting too. And like the fact of the matter is the running backs have the highest hit percentage like later on in the draft. And if you feel that Isaiah Davis is going to hit and he's going to be a stud running back 3 for you, then like a stud running back, or even just a running back 3 that's rosterable in the 5th round is a hit in today's NFL. Like if you hit in the 5th round, regardless if it's a running back or a freaking kicker, like that's valuable because typically people don't hit. So if they had some conviction and they like Davis, then get him. And now you have a situation where, hey, Izzy may make the roster, he may not. If he doesn't make the roster and he struggles with this, then guess what? You have a young running back 3. Like if let's say now if they didn't draft Davis and then Izzy doesn't work out, then hey, the Jets need running back 3, and then they have to sign a guy for $1.5 million, $2 million. So like they drafted one. Who cares? Like it's not the biggest deal in the world, even though you could disagree with it. And maybe you wanted some receiver or whatever it might have been. But I like Davis. I do. Allen feels like the more volatile guy, a little bit more boom or bust, where Davis seems like, and this is just for lack of a better comparison. So I'm trying to keep him as like, in the Jet realm, but like a more powerful, like Bilal Powell, who's just going to get you like 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, good pass protector, all that stuff. So I like Davis, but before that pick, rewind, and I'll hit this question a little bit with this from Harold, but Jordan Travis, I just put out his review. Harold says, what's up, Joe? Finishing Travis review. I haven't gotten to your final thoughts yet. From your critique so far, I assume you will say he needs a lot of work on his fundamentals. Can he be a quarterback of the future? So I'll throw it to you. The pick of Jordan Travis, and then since the pick of Jordan Travis, you looking into him, what do you think about him in the 5th round?
Yeah, I was definitely a fan of going the developmental quarterback route once they trade Zach Wilson. And I think he's a good candidate. I mean, whenever you could get someone who I think slips into the 3rd day, partially because of injuries, I'm not saying he would have been a 1st round pick or even 2nd round. I mean, we don't know, but I just like that value because, there's a good chance that things will be okay and they'll be healthy. And then in the end, you got a good talent value just because of an injury that might not even linger into the season, especially with the quarterback who you're not even planning to use this year. So I think the injury contributing to his draft stock makes him a good value pick. And I like him because I think his game it lends itself to him being a candidate to develop into a good backup. Like, do I think he can be the Jets franchise quarterback? I'm not sure about that, as ideal as that would be, but could he be a nice long-term backup? I think with his ball security and, just the experience that he had and some of the tools that you see from him, I think it all kind of looks like good backup style of play, which is better than just throwing the pick away for nothing. So I think he's a good candidate to be a potential long-term backup.
Yeah. And like, even if I think if he were to be a starter, because I don't want to put like a ceiling on him necessarily in terms of like just being a backup, I think he could be an average starter. I don't think he has a physical upside to be like a top tier guy. Obviously not Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, any of these guys, but like where, like Tyrod Taylor in his prime, a Ryan Tannehill, guy with maybe not the best arm, but has some wheels to him. Like I could see him being something like that, even though I wouldn't necessarily bank on it. But like Harold is asking here, he has a lot of work to do, man. LSU game was discouraging. Watching that was my first experience to him, and the LSU game was pretty rough. Harold, I'm sure if you watch the first 6 plays of that review, you're like, wow, this is starting off awfully.
Yeah, I know. Like you told me to put on the YouTube clip to skip the beginning, and so pretty much I think the whole YouTube clip is positive. But anyone who watched the full review, if you get into that, it's like, it's like a one bad one after the next.
And like and it is what it is, dude. Like it's at a certain point, like I'm going to talk about a player and all their positives and strengths. Like on this show, I'll talk about a player and all of his positives and his negatives on that show. But when you're only putting up like a 12 to 15 minute, clip of it, like nobody wants to watch the negative stuff. Every comment's going to be negative. There's going to be downvotes. Somebody's going to come back. So you tend to put up a little bit more positivity. And the first 6 plays of that review were bad. Like it was very bad. So that would not have hit on YouTube. But I think there's a long way to go. In terms of his legs and stuff, I think that's all plus. I think his arm is okay. Nani, I don't know if you watched review. Obviously Harold did. His mechanics are dreadful. His decision making under pressure at times, he panics and will just throw the ball up. Is not really willing to step into pressure. He's always fading off of his back foot or not completing his throw because there's pressure in his face. His accuracy is wildly inconsistent at times. His deep ball accuracy is wildly inconsistent. He can get hung on reads. He can bounce between reads. He can come off of reads too quickly. His anticipation is there at times, but then other times it's super, super spotty. So he's a guy who undoubtedly needs to sit. But hey, lucky for us, this is not 2016 and, or whatever year Bryce Petty was drafted, and we're relying on him to potentially be the starter. And he's talking about learning coverages and how to identify the mic through fucking Madden, like wild. So the fact that this kid has 2 years to learn, I think it's obviously great. A kid who is, applauded for his like mental, for his leadership. I think he's gonna be a great add to the locker room, learning from a guy who seems like a good dude in Tyrod Taylor. Obviously I'm not there. I can't, personally attest for him, but he seems like a good dude. And Rodgers, the guy who is just so terrible, Nania, for putting out his opinions. Like I'm not even trying to get into this, but I don't know if you saw the tweet the other day from the old SNY beat reporter or whatever, Ralph Vacchiano or whatever. But like, he's saying that him and who's the kicker, Harrison Butker are competing for the worst guy in the NFL, award. And you got guys beating pregnant females out there, but Aaron Rodgers, because he differs from your political views and didn't take the vaccine, is now just as bad as a guy who beats women. It's like it's just beyond ridiculous. But again, this terrible guy, Aaron Rodgers, who's such an asshole, doesn't care about anybody but himself, is inviting Malachi Corley to stay in his guest room, and all of this stuff. So he seems like he'll even be a good guy for Jordan Travis to learn from. But I don't know if you want to hit on that at all, Nania, with the Rodgers stuff. And I'm not trying to get political here or anything like that. Yeah. We don't do that on the show. We come to this show to get away from that stuff. But people are really soft with people who disagree with their opinions. Literally, like, remember sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt me, or however that goes. Like, words now are the stones. Like, people act like they're getting physically harmed by people disagreeing with their opinions. Like, it is wild times we live in.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that with Rodgers is like, and I've seen this since, the schedule came out. We found out the Jets have their, 6 primetime games, tied for the most in the league. Mm-hmm. Like, everyone talks with so much shock and anger about the Jets getting all those primetime games, but they don't realize that those exact reactions are why they're getting them. Like, they don't care if you like them or not. It's just everyone has something to say about Aaron Rodgers. So that's why he's going to be on primetime. Like, if they gave the Titans 6 primetime games, people wouldn't agree with it, but they wouldn't care. They just wouldn't watch because no one thinks anything about them. But Aaron Rodgers, whether you like him or not, you do think something. So that's why he's on primetime and the Jets are on primetime. So it's just weird to me, like, how everyone has so much shock about that when the fact that you're talking about it is the reason that they're on. So hopefully the Jets, he's healthy and the Jets play well enough to justify it this time. But it makes total sense why the Jets are viewed by the league as a big ticket.
Yeah, and kind of talking about the offense a little bit, and like just thinking about Rodgers, like what is your confidence? And I'm gonna knock on wood here, and I don't like talking about injuries, but like in terms of the talk about the Jets like biggest kind of like not like pivot points, but their biggest like I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Like their biggest factors that can change this season, I guess. And one
variables,
coaching,
I guess?
Variables. That's the word I'm looking for. Variables. Yeah. Coaching is one of them. Injuries is one. Like, how concerned are you from the injuries on this offense? Because you look at it, Rodgers, and like it, and it's funny, like people talk about Rodgers, like 2022 MV or 2021 MVP, Rodgers 2022 down season. It's like, I think people forget that he was playing without Bakhtiari that year with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs as his number 1 and 2 receiver. Like, he didn't really have much, and he broke his thumb, and he threw 28 touchdowns and 12 picks. Like, I'm hoping for more than that, but like that would be one of the better seasons we've ever seen from a quarterback with the Jets, which is wild. But like, what are your thoughts on like the variability of this offense, or not the variability, like the volatility, I guess, that some people are talking about with the injuries? Because Rodgers has been relatively healthy. Tyron Smith, like, yeah, he's not been healthy, but he hasn't been like injured, right? Like, missing 3 or 4 games a year is kind of, it's not like normal necessarily, but I'll take 14 games of Tyron Smith, 13 games of Tyron Smith, then him healthy for the playoffs. Morgan Moses has been healthy his entire career, tore his pec last year, but prior to that, he's been healthy. So like, do you think the injury stuff for the offense is a little bit over? And obviously Mike Williams too, right? Torn ACL. But do you think it's maybe a little bit overstated, or am I just, green glasses?
Well, I think the most important thing is they set themselves up well to handle the potential injuries, or at least much better than what we're used to. They got a real backup who's, better than most of the starters that they've ever had in the history of this team, at least over the past couple of decades. They drafted Olu in the first round to really make sure that they got a high-level talent coming in case those two veteran starters get hurt. And we'll see what he is as a rookie. But there's a decent hit rate of first-round tackles being good from the jump. And at the very least, he's going to be around average, I would say, which is still much better than what you were looking at. Receiver is a question mark. I think that's the one spot where, if Mike Williams isn't healthy, then I think you have some real questions, because then you're back to square one with Garrett Wilson being the only weapon on the outside that defenses are focused on. And who else is going to win when he's drawing doubles and everyone else is getting single coverage? Because right now there isn't anyone else in the receiver room outside of Williams and Garrett Wilson who you can trust to take advantage of those situations. And not many teams do have a guy past the top two who you really would trust in those situations, but it can get a lot better than, Gibson and Lazard and Corley. We'll see what he is as a rookie in terms of the route running game. So I think receivers were your most questionable, but the running back depth, they improved, I think. And you don't know what these guys are going to bring you, but I think a rookie running back is always, to me, a better bet than a veteran. I mean, we saw what happened last year. I think veteran running backs are, even if it's the biggest name you can find, I think it's a worse bet than just getting a young, fresh pair of legs in there in the third day of the draft. Tight end, I think questionable depth there as well, beyond your top two. And I think Ruckert still has a lot to prove in terms of his blocking, his overall game, and being a tight end too. So, but overall, at least O-line, with getting Olu and getting a good backup quarterback, those are the two most important spots in the offense, and they have very good depth at those two spots. So they set themselves up solidly for those injuries.
Yeah, and I think Rodgers is looking like a top 10 guy this year. Like I don't know, maybe it's the state of the NFL. There's not a lot of great quarterbacks right now, but I still expect him to be top 10. Like we'll do an exercise. I pulled up the NFL teams, and I'm going to name off the teams, and you put up your fingers for the quarterbacks or tell me I can't see you. Tell me the quarterbacks you'll take over Aaron Rodgers. I'm not talking about for the future. I'm talking about for this year. You're trying to win a Super Bowl in 2024 with the Jets. Who would you replace him with for this season? And maybe I can just split screen this so I could actually see you a little bit. Let me just get
quickly before you started off, to touch on what you said before, like in terms of 2022. Like for me, I don't want to toss that season completely aside, because there are a lot of legitimate explanations for it. Like you got into it, but at the end of the day, he did. It wasn't the greatest season in terms of his production. So, and he is 2 years older. He does have the Achilles. So I don't think it's fair to, just completely ignore that and act like there isn't a possibility of him maybe not being great. But I do think that season is more of the floor. Like that I think that's about the worst you could get from him. And even if that is what you get from him, the Jets are a playoff team with that level of quarterback play. But I do think if you want to win a Super Bowl, you're hoping that he's going to be more than that. I don't think they win a Super Bowl with 2022 Rodgers stats, but they are a playoff team. So hopefully he is more than that.
So I think there's a key point there. I think you saying Aaron Rodgers stats is different than you saying Aaron Rodgers, like the player he was. Because if you take 22 Aaron Rodgers and put him with Mike Williams, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Tyler Conklin, and our defense, are his numbers 28 touchdowns and 12 picks?
Agreed.
No, it's probably more like, let's say 35 touchdowns and 9 picks, something like that. Like he's a much better quarterback than maybe like the stats show, because he wasn't really necessarily helped. But let's just go through and I wasn't planning on doing this here, but like it's a pretty quick exercise. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. No, right?
No.
For this year. We're not Kirk Cousins. No. Right? Bryce Young, no. Caleb Williams, no. Dak Prescott? No, I'm saying no personally. That's just, and I'm not.
I think if he were better in the playoffs, he might have it because like he does produce in the regular season, but the very consistent playoff struggles makes it a no for me.
Yeah, and again, future, yeah, maybe, but like just for this season, I'm definitely taking over Dak. I'm trying to be as unbiased as I'm trying to be unbiased here. I'm not taking Jared Goff over Aaron Rodgers. I'm not taking Jordan Love over Aaron Rodgers this year. I'm not taking Matt Stafford, especially considering his recent injury past, over Aaron Rodgers, right? Sam Darnold, JJ McCarthy, the Vikings, the Saints, Derek Carr, no. Daniel Jones. So like, okay, this is a conversation. I still think I'm taking Aaron Rodgers over Jalen Hurts here. I'm at the Eagles. I think Jalen Hurts is fine. I think Jalen Hurts is largely overrated by the general NFL media. I think he's okay on a really good team, realistically. I don't know if you want to say you take Jalen Hurts over Aaron Rodgers, but I'm personally not.
I think after 2022, I probably would have thought about him more, but he had a huge down year this year.
Yeah. Okay. Not taking Brock Purdy, right? We're not taking Geno Smith. So we're quite a list through here, and we haven't said one quarterback. Baker Mayfield. Who do we got? We have Jaden Daniels now in with the Commanders, right? So the whole NFC, we would take Rodgers over every single team in the NFC. So he'd be the best quarterback in the NFC.
That is the problem, though. The only ones that you would think about are in our comp.
Okay, so we're going there. Don't worry. Lamar Jackson, we'll give it to
power skills, like so heavily lean towards.
We'll give it to Lamar, right? We'll be fair, and even if it's an argument, we'll give it to Lamar. I'm okay with giving it to Lamar. Okay, so we got one. Josh Allen, we'll give it to Josh Allen, even though in certain games I'd argue that Rodgers could be better than him. But okay, fine, we'll give it to him. Joe Burrow, okay, fine. Joe Burrow, even though he's had plenty of injury concerns recently, so that's not even a slam dunk because he might not be healthy. But okay, we'll give 3 quarterbacks over him. Deshaun Watson, no. Broncos got Bo Nix, Zach Wilson. No. We would probably take Stroud at this point, right? Like even after that rookie year, like that was a pretty monstrous rookie year. Would you take Stroud over Rodgers?
Yeah. If we assume that he is going to take a leap off of what he already was, probably
4. That's 4 teams right now. We have the Colts, Anthony Richardson. No. Trevor Lawrence. No, I'm not taking Trevor Lawrence. No. I think last year was more of a conversation. Trevor Lawrence has not been some generational prospect. Like he's been okay, but not great, just okay. Kansas City, we're taking Mahomes, right? So that's 5. Raiders, whoever their starter is, no. Herbert, okay, we'll take Herbert, I guess. 6. Dolphins, Tua, no. Pats, no. Steelers, Russell Wilson, no. Titans, no. So 6 quarterback.
Yeah, and I think even Burrow is debatable. He's coming off. He was not good when he played last year, so I think that's comparable to the last we saw of Rodgers. Injury prone, production down. And then 2 seasons prior to that, Rodgers won MVPs, and Burrow was great as well. But give it to Rodgers, obviously. So I'd maybe even put Rodgers over Burrow, but just to make the point and be unbiased as possible. You're still talking about only 6 that we chose over them, right?
But even if 6, you put him above Burrow, that's the 5th best quarterback in the NFL, at least for this year. And like, are you super convinced that Herbert is better than Aaron Rodgers? I'm not super convinced that Justin Herbert's better than Aaron Rodgers. Like he had that really good year or 2, but he's been good, but not great. So like you can put him anywhere from 4 to like 6, 7, 8, but like there's no way I see Aaron Rodgers being just average. Like I still think he's
undoubtedly
in that 6,
top
7, 8
10.
range.
I think that's the biggest thing you could say.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way he's outside of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that again, just want to do a little exercise there. It's like I'm still expecting quite a bit from Rodgers, but transitioning back into the draft, we'll get into the schedule a little bit. We'll get into the chat a little bit as well. I know people. This is like the most dead point of the offseason. Not like nobody cares about anything at this point. Even the schedule coming out, like it's already been talked about. I'm sure to death, but past that, obviously, and I'll ask you just 2 more draft questions. We go to the 2 DBs we get 5th round, or was it 6th round and 7th round, or 6th or 5th and 7th, whatever it was. Stiggers, CFL. Never thought I'd be watching CFL film, but our Connect got it for me, thank God. And then Jalen Key, the last pick in the draft. Thoughts on the 2 DBs the Jets added in the later rounds of the draft?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Quantez, I mean, it was hard to really break down the analytics side of it because being in the CFL, you don't get too much. But the one thing that did stand out to me was he had a ton of tackles for a cornerback. And then looking at some of the clips that you put out, it does seem like he has that ability as a
I'll tell you
tackler
right now, Nania.
pursuit.
I'll just let you know. Tackling is, and again, you put more highlight stuff on Twitter. His tackling was dreadful. It was dreadful. I'm just gonna be transparent.
Okay.
It was bad.
I was just going off some of the clips you put.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and
I guess
like,
not.
people
But
talk
I
about
was
safety
hoping
with him.
based on that he would be a special teams candidate.
He it's like the safety talk for him. I can't see it. He's really good athleticism. I think he's pretty good, like staying over top of guys, but. And I'm not even kidding here. Like there were some games where he missed every other tackle, like every other it had to be nearly 40% of missed tackles. It was dreadful. So he cannot tackle at all. So I don't think he can play safety, but I do like the upside of athleticism. I do like the mindset. I like the story, all that stuff. So you can learn how to tackle better at the NFL level. Like he didn't play in the collegiate program. He's not in an NFL team. They're a little bit more of like a wide open, kind of situation in the CFL. So maybe there's not as much of an emphasis on tackling, but it was pretty damn bad. If you watch a review, you'll see. But nonetheless, I just wanted to, just before you said like anything about safety or special teams or anything like that, just want to throw it out there that I found myself like shaking my head at some of his tackle attempts, but continue on your thoughts of Stiggers, and I guess you can get into to Key.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would ask you, what do you think is his defining positive trait that got him drafted, especially like coming out of the CFL, not something you see a lot. I don't know if we've ever seen that. So like, what do you think did get him drafted?
I really think it's athleticism. Like I think like how fluid he is, how quick he is out of his breaks. Like I know he only has like 4 or 5 speed, but he has good acceleration. I think he gets to his top speed pretty quickly. Like he's a willing tackler. He's willing to blow up screens and stuff like that, but his technique is just not there. So yeah, like I think it's more just based on athleticism and then the story. Like he's a moldable piece of clay, but he needs a lot of technical work. So yeah, I would defining quality, I would say athleticism. And then the next one, we can get into Key. I think the biggest upside or the biggest like positive to him, because watching him, he seems like just very average at everything. Like he's a little bit more like a box guy, a little bit more aggressive. He'll lay the lumber on some guys and things like that. But I think that when you look at Jalen Key and you look at his transition from UAB to Alabama, like he came into UAB or into Alabama as like the third safety, and he impressed Saban enough with a really complex system for their DBs enough to be a starter after one offseason with him, and then he retained that starter spot all year. So that at least speaks to his like dedication and his smarts in the film room, and then obviously him being at a big program. So I think that's why they drafted him. But did you see anything with Jalen Key, like looking into the statistics or anything? I know he only had one pick. It was actually a pretty nice pick, but that was it from him last year.
Yeah, honestly, I've looked into him the least out of any of these guys. I don't have anything to say on him, honestly.
I have I literally just finished his review last night, so I still got to record it. The only guy I have to watch actually still is Fashanu's 2022 film, but I'll get to that. But before we get into the schedule, I was going to catch up in the chat a little bit. The fact that we can't have 9 a.m. beers until week 4. That I saw NYJ Matt tweet this out as well. Sneakers to Boots. Why are there's not 8 o'clock beers? Why are we having beers at 9 o'clock when the stadium opens at 8? Like my first beer at MetLife Stadium is at 8:05. We get out of the bus, we set up our stuff. Takes 5 to 10 minutes. 8:10 we do a shotgun. That's just how we roll. Because if you don't shotgun, my thing is like you nurse that first beer for an hour and a half, so you just get that really shitty 10 seconds out of the way, and then you're good for the rest of the day. Like you don't need to nurse anything after that. So I'm disappointed in you, Sneakers to Boots, that you're having beers at 9 a.m. and not 8 a.m. We have another Chuck Clark is an upgrade over Jordan Whitehead for sure. That's like a big like wild card for this team is the Clark versus Whitehead thing, because we're all anticipating Tony Adams, which he was probably below average last year, but I think he's going to be like an average-ish free safety in the league. Nothing to write home about, but nothing necessarily special, which I think is okay. Jordan Whitehead, and this is something where you caught heat on Twitter, Jordan Whitehead, Cook and all those people, but like he was god awful last year. He gave up 7-8 touchdowns himself. Very high missed tackle rate. So I think if you just have anybody, just even Ashton Davis would probably be an upgrade over Jordan Whitehead at this point. But Jordan Whitehead to Chuck Clark, I think Chuck Clark is, again, and I'm not just trying to be like lukewarm here, but I think he's like an average safety. He's very smart, really good tackler. He diagnoses plays really well. He's always in the right spot. It's just Chuck Clark's problem is he's not a freak athlete like some of these other guys. I think if he was, he would be an upper tier safety in the league, but I think he's very solid. So just with the addition of Clark, and we're assuming some level of health here, and minus Whitehead, I think the safety room is actually going to be much better than it was last year, just because you're getting Whitehead off. And it's so funny too, because like he would shit on the articles and stuff. It's like, yeah, you clearly blew this coverage, you clearly missed this tackle, but he's like still trying to blame other people and stuff. Like he was such a turd. I'm so glad to be rid of Whitehead.
Yeah, what teams is he on now? Are the Jets?
He went back to the Bucks. He went back to the Bucks.
Unfortunately, won't be facing him this year. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a spot where the Jets have a chance to make up for some of the other losses on defense. Because, we talked about the pass rush and how hopefully they could break even there if McDonald develops. Maybe JJ has another leap in him, so they could break even there. But they did lose a lot of people on defense, so I think this is one spot where they have a chance to improve and help the overall defense be similar or better than it was last year, because Clark, I think, is the perfect Whitehead replacement, and you laid out his game, but I think he's not going to do anything that's super flashy. Like he might have no picks this year or one pick or no forced fumbles. Like he's not really going to have a highlight reel, but what he's also not going to have a reel of is blown coverages of touchdowns over the top. So that alone, he's going to make far fewer mistakes, and he's going to decrease those big plays and just do a better job as the last line of defense, I think.
Brian Newell says, you guys think we will get flexed into week 17 at Bills if our earlier primetime games are exciting? Sunday Night Football that week is Miami Browns, which isn't even I would say no here, Brian, just because, assuming how these, or relative to expectations, you're assuming that the Browns and the Dolphins are going to be in some type of wild card race at that point in the season. So will they flex them out in a wild card race for the Jets, who are also going to be in a race? I think if any game is more likely to get flexed, it's that week 18 game than the week 17 game, just because I think Miami Browns is going to be, I think there's going to be some type of playoff stakes on the line in that game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing about the primetime games, that they put them all in the first, I think, 11 games of their season. So that whole back half,
6 and 11 games.
Yeah, that whole post-bye stretch is still open for flexing, and there are some good matchups in that stretch too. So we could easily see nearly half of the Jets games this year being primetime if they could get another flex or two there.
Matt says, "Hey, do you think JJ could potentially be a good moving to inside on pass downs, a la JFM? What are your thoughts here?"
I mean, I definitely don't think like as a true defensive tackle, but we did see a lot of last year of him like standing up in the A gap. So do you see some sort of upside with him in that kind of role?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I didn't expect you to say it. I wasn't even trying to like bait you into this. I thought I expected you to kind of say that. It's like JFM can win up straight up as a 3-tech. You're not going to see JJ win up straight up as a 3-tech. Like you could loop him and twist in games and all that stuff and try to get him, or like, hey, if you're going to overload both sides and just isolate a guard and it's just him one-on-one with a guard, and you could scheme that up where it's going to be him just one-on-one with a guard, and then he could use his athleticism to get around that guy. Yeah, sure, but like just as a straight up 3-tech, I don't like, absolutely not. He doesn't have the weight. JFM was what, 285, 280. JJ is 250, 255. It's just they're different types of players. Alan says, Jets keeping 4 running backs, say goodbye to Nick Bawden. The one thing I will clarify, or the one thing I do want to maybe clarify for some people is, Isaiah Davis, I guess he had some he definitely did have some reps at like H-back, fullback. And I think people, after he's drafted, obviously they go to PFF, they see where he's aligned, all this stuff. He was aligned at fullback, 150 reps, and then people automatically make the jump to, oh my God, he could play fullback with the Jets. Two birds, one stone. He cannot play fullback. Let's not do that. I watched in terms of like his lead blocking and stuff. That's something that's not going to happen at this point. Maybe he could develop into it, but just saying that like, hey, he's going to replace Nick Bawden, I don't know. the thing with Nick Bolton is he played an average of like 7 to 8 snaps last year. You're anticipating the Jets running the ball a little bit more this year. So could it be 10, 11, 12 snaps with Bolton? What do you think there? Do you think there's a possibility that they keep 4 running backs and Bolton? Or do you think it's a thing where, hey, it may be a decision on roster cut down day between Bolton and Izzy as like that fourth, quasi, running back fullback?
Yeah, I mean, as it stands right now, I think it's more so the latter there, Izzy versus Bawden, because I do think he's going to have a role because he played in 16 games last year. He played 13% of the offensive snaps, which isn't a lot, but like you said, you're getting like 6-7 snaps a game. And that's with the Jets having the fewest rush attempts in the league because they're trailing the entire season. So I think you're planning on being ahead more often, running the ball more, and especially if they're going to be like a gap kind of team, run inside, run more downhill, power type stuff. You're going to want a fullback for that. So I think he does have a pretty good shot. I am curious though, like if they do plan to continue making fullback a key part of the offense, why they haven't, maybe tried to bring someone else in to compete, because I think Bawden is okay, but he's not.
You'd assume so more this year, though, right? Because like they're going to be running counter and power and stuff, and like undoubtedly more. So there's definitely going to be one. We're going to be running the ball more because we're going to have the ball more, in my opinion. And two, we're definitely, in my opinion, we're definitely changing schemes, or at least leaning much more heavily on that system. So you'd anticipate them playing a fullback more often. And obviously, what could have eliminated this conversation would be, Jeremy Ruckert stepping up last year. And Jeremy Ruckert, you know what it is. Like, he's very volatile. One time he blows up a guy, next time he completely whiffs, and then that guy tackles the running back for a tackle for loss. So I think that Ruckert maybe had an opportunity to kind of take that job, but he didn't do enough for me. So I think if I had like gun to my head right now, gun to your head right now, here we go, figurative guns. I'm saying Bawden actually makes the roster, which I didn't think I would say, but based on their change in scheme, like unless they bring in somebody else, who's going to play that role right now, like sufficiently? So I would say he actually makes it. Now guns off my head. Now guns to your head. What do you think in Bawden? And we're 3 months away here. What are you saying? Is he make the roster or did he not make the roster?
Now that we're talking about it, I do feel like he would. I mean, I'd have to make my whole thing and like see how some of the other positions shake out. Like, who are we taking off for him? But now that we're talking about it, I do feel like it's going to happen. Just thinking about the scheme change, like some of the overall philosophical things that they've done with this offense, having a fullback fits into it. And they kept him last year despite not being that type of team and not running the ball a lot. Although they wanted to, in terms of, it didn't turn out that they did because they were trailing. But so I think so. Yeah, I would say yes.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Development of quarterback. Let's just see. Underthrowing balls like crazy. It's fine to have an opinion, but Rodgers is really freaking embarrassing sometimes. Like, he makes the whole team look dumb, especially considering the special treatment. He doesn't get special treatment because we've never had like a Hall of Fame quarterback. So I get like, some of the special treatment, like I get it, but like I don't know, man. Maybe you and I disagree, like Matt, but I don't think anything he's saying is outlandish. And the problem with a lot of the media too is I don't know what that account was. Was it Dov who just completely misquoted him? Like, he was referencing somebody else making I think he was referencing somebody else's conspiracy theory. And then Dov comes out there and just puts it out as like Rodgers' conspiracy theory. It's like, no, he was talking about somebody else's conspiracy theory. And then you made it seem to be his own, which I hate Dov and NFL rumors and all these like Ari and all these stupid freaking accounts. And I know you go after them all the time, but like, dude, it's just embarrassing. And like I tweeted out there, like Dov has like 300,000 followers. Like, I know like 20 people who I follow. I only follow like 90 people. The 20 people I follow him. Like, why are people following this stupid fuck? Like, I hate that guy. Oh my God. So no one can find more than 5 QBs you want this season. Yeah, again, and we said Stroud, and I think Harold a little bit down in the chat, you said like maybe not Stroud, and I agree with you, like maybe not Stroud, so maybe he's 5. Then Nania takes him above Burrow because of the injuries. Now he's 4. I think there was a conversation about him, Lamar Jackson. Is he going to get injured again? How is he going to do it in a second? I would still take Lamar Jackson over him, but I think it's a conversation. It's like anywhere from 4 to 6, maybe 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 if you're really down on him. But hey, give me a top 10 quarterback any day, So let's see. For 1 year, Mike is saying he's taking Rodgers over Stroud for the next 3 years. Yes, give me Stroud. Yeah. Gun to my head right now, Rodgers or Stroud. I'm probably taking Rodgers because he has a longer track record. And to me, like when you're looking at players and their career like trajectories and stuff like that, like I think the biggest indicator for success is like typically year 2, because like you could come out and dominate in year 1. How do you play when teams adjust to you as a quarterback? So the number 2 year for quarterbacks after their breakout is a huge year. So big year for Stroud. They helped him out though, like Stephon Diggs. They got a lot of good players.
I think there's a lot of examples of that. I mean, Baker Mayfield had a record-setting rookie year, but then he kind of never really built off of it. And he's solid now, but he wasn't. Yeah, he's not number 1 pick caliber. You think of RG3, and I know he had a lot of injuries, but he had an amazing rookie year, but then he never got close to that level again. So those are just 2 that came to mind. But yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah. Mike says, I think Rodgers is where Brady is late career, won't put up fantasy points, so he'll get underrated by that. But having 20 years of experience, dude, like just in my opinion, and like some teams, like they'll build to kind of thwart like their division foes. And like, is there any better way to beat out the Dolphins than keeping them off the field, running the ball down their throats, and keeping Tyreek's like get nice cold hammies on the sideline? Like I think that's good for the Jets to beat the Dolphins, and to me that's their biggest opponent right now. And even the Bills too, like keep Josh Allen off the field and just run it down their throats. So I think there's gonna be some games where Rodgers throws for like 16 for 24, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's just super efficient. And Breece Hall is getting 25 carries and just running the ball down people's throats. So Harold says, I definitely saw the flashes of athleticism for Stiggers. Can't wait for your review of Stiggers. FY, he actually ran the same. Yeah, 4.45. I said that before. At least I thought I said that before, but I would say he's even faster than Rome, just because he's a little bit more, he's more acceleration. But yeah, there's some athleticism there. There's some really good plays, but his tackling, and it's not something I highlighted in the review a ton because who wants to watch 10 missed tackles in a row or anything like that? But it's there. Like he missed a ton of them. Jets Afterburners podcast. I was on there last night, so go check them out. 2 powerhouses right here. Thank you, Joe, for spitting facts last night on the show. Nania, you are the man. Keep slanging it, boys. We appreciate that. Shit, Joe. Sorry, mate. I think Happy Tanking's always late. I think every time he's like, oh, sorry, I missed it. Sorry, I'm late. But what's up? What's up, Tanking? Is Rodgers injury prone? We wouldn't say that, right? Like I guess in his latter years, like I guess we could say he's been injury prone recently, but he broke his thumb because he hit a Giants player's helmet after throwing a ball. And then he tore his Achilles, unfortunately, because of himself. Like that's the thing that hurts the most. It wasn't because of anybody else that he tore his Achilles. It was because of Rodgers, and he didn't get rid of that ball that he tore his Achilles. I wouldn't say throughout his career he's injury prone. I guess I don't know if you want to say he's injury prone because of the last 2 seasons. How do you kind of take that?
No, I think he's generally been more durable than average. I mean, I pulled up his games here before this past season. He played all but 1 game over the previous 5. And I know he had the thumb injury in 22, but like you said, it kind of I mean, injuries like that can happen to anyone. I think an injury prone guy is like a Tyron Smith, it's just constantly happening. But if every now and then something happens to you because it just happened to break that way, then that's just football. But you look at Rodgers, his whole career, I mean, the majority of his seasons are 16, 16, 15. It's like, yeah, except for 2013 and 17, he had missed about half the season. Other than that, and last year he played pretty much every game, so he's generally pretty durable.
Happy Tanking said this is just a point. Like RG3 dominated year 1, year 2 not so great. Was Winston pretty good in year 1, and then he fell off a little bit? I know Blake Bortles he had a good year or 2, then he really fell off, right? I think Bortles was a little bit later on where he had like that 2015 good season with the Jaguars, but it happened.
Winston
it happens
started
a lot.
Pretty solid, I guess. For a rookie, he made a lot of plays, but he just never got the turnovers out of his game.
Yeah. Some of his off-season like workout drills are like some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my entire life. Like they're just not translatable at all to the NFL field. But nonetheless, I'm going to I don't know if I guess we can just do like a rough. Let's just do a win-loss. Who cares right now? In terms of the schedule. Like people are like, oh, you can't predict wins. I can, because we're doing it right now. And with that being said, I could say, hey, listen, I'm doing a win-loss prediction on May 17th, and a lot of shit's going to change, and so get a general feel of audio. Okay, let's see. Regular season. Okay. So starting out, Nani, I don't know how you felt about the Jets opening, or like what their opening game was before the schedule came out. What were your thoughts on what you wanted in terms of the opening game? And then how do you feel about obviously getting San Fran right off the jump?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to see something low key, like even if it was on the road, like the Titans game. Go ahead, start that, then come home week 2. And even if week 2 was like a big primetime game, but I did want to see a low key start after last year. Like, hey, let's just stay out of the spotlight. Let's go win a game and then have that going into a primetime game. So this was the polar opposite of that, but it does give you it's an opportunity. You know, if you do win it, doesn't get any better than that to start the season. Like now you go the rest of the season thinking you win every single game. So it's an opportunity.
And what are your thoughts about like playing them early? Like, because some people are trying to spin it like, hey, well, you get them earlier, so you get to prepare for them longer. And then, like in my mind, I would like to ask people in that question, it's like, hey, considering that we're talking about coaching here, do you have more faith in Shanahan preparing for a whole summer or the Jets preparing for a whole summer? Like, I would give the advantage to Shanahan. Now, I get that the Niners can start slow, even though last year they started off 5-0, but the year prior, like they lost to the Bears. I think the one year they started like 3-2 or 2-3. So there's a possibility they have a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover, and week 1 is super unpredictable. But so I think there's like a possibility that maybe we catch them at the right moment. But you know, in my opinion, you have a better chance to beat the Niners week 10 when Rodgers is gelling with his new teammates, when the offensive line has some continuity with each other, when and the defense will click right off the jump. But like the offense has a lot of kind of speed bumps, I think, to get over initially in the season. So I think you have a better chance to beat the Niners week 10, 11, 12, 13 than you do week 1. So I didn't love it. I'm like you. It's not a thing where like, hey, like people are out there like, oh, things that a bitch would say. It's like, okay, like guy, Joe 1 2 3 4 5 6 egg picture on Twitter calling somebody else a bitch. It's like, and considering the fact that guy's not out there strapping up a helmet against Tyron Smith and these guys, it's like just wild. But it's not for lack of being soft. Like I'm not afraid of a loss in a football game that doesn't affect my life. It's more so I'd rather the Jets play the most advantageous schedule. And I think playing them off the jump, like, yeah, it's good to get it out of the way, but I also think it lessens their chances of winning, where later on in the season, they probably have a better chance. But I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I mean, the one good thing is that, fingers crossed, you can have a healthy Jets team going into this game before, the season goes on. You don't know who gets hurt, but, I mean, I don't even know if I should say that with the Jets' luck in the offseason sometimes.
Yeah.
Or in opening week Monday Night Football games. So hopefully, that is
not even Rodgers. Not even Rodgers. I remember gassing up Clark for like so long in the offseason, and then like literally 2 days after his review dropped, he got injured. Just like, of course.
So I think that's the one hopeful positive, but I do agree because the Niners have a very established system. Most of these players have been there for a while. Coaching staff is intact. Like that's a well-oiled machine over there. The Jets are going to have probably 8 new starters total between both sides of the ball, especially on offense. So starting right away on the road against that is not ideal. I would rather have them when you've had some time to gel a little bit. So that's why I wanted a low-key start. But I'm not complaining. Like you said, it's just what would be more advantageous. But still, the Jets, they have the talent now to compete with anyone, and the quarterback as well, provided that he's out there. So any game they can win. It's not like in previous years with this Jets team where they needed a perfect storm of these factors to have a chance to beat a team on the road like the Niners. They can win any one of these games on their schedule.
Yeah, if you just letting you know, Nania, you're gonna get Joe 1 2 3 4 5. He's gonna call you a bitch now. He's sitting behind the egg picture. And it's like funny too. Like it's the same type of guy like eating Cheetos, wiping it off on his wife beater, who's talking about these guys being lazy and shit. Like this guy's a lazy piece of shit. It's like, dude, you look at yourself, my guy. But nonetheless, Niners week 1. We'll do a rough schedule. Like realistically, you look at the Jets schedule right off the jump. They're favored in 14 games, right? Like they could win this game easily. They can win every single game on their schedule. I think there's a way where, listen, we could beat the Bills last year with Zach Wilson. They could beat the Niners with Aaron Rodgers.
2 years in a row, they did it.
They could beat anybody in the NFL legitimately. Now, with that being said, if we're going to do a schedule prediction, I think we'd both just chalk kind of here and say loss first game of the year, right? 0-1. And maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. I would predict a loss here. I think they could easily win though. Realistically, I think they could win any game. So 0-1. I guess we'll kind of agree. I guess we'll try to come to a consensus. 0-1. Now, the next game, I was hoping that if it was the Niners, we were going to be able to stay out in the West Coast and just hit our West Coast trip right off the jump and go to the Cardinals. Now, obviously, that didn't happen for the Jets. I don't love that it's two. Like, if it was going to be 2 away, at least give me Niners, Cardinals. But the fact that it's not and it's Tennessee, like you probably come back home and then go back out to Tennessee. So I wish that the second game was just a home game, so you could stay at home. But obviously, they get Tennessee Sunday 1:00 game. What are your thoughts on the matchup and then 2 away games to start the season?
I mean, the Titans do have. I think they're a little underrated in terms of their talent. Like they have some good players, but I think overall, it's definitely one of the teams I expect to be the bottom of the AFC, just because I don't have that much confidence in Will Levis. And I think that's this whole stretch here, these next 4 games, quarterback is the thing that sets it apart. Like any team could be a lot better than you expect. It happens every single year. No one thought in 2022 the Jaguars and Lions were going to give the Jets trouble at the end of the season, but the Broncos and Packers wouldn't. So you never know, but we do know, or at least we feel very confident that these 4 games, Jets are going to have the better quarterback by a long shot. And that makes this a really favorable stretch here. So I don't want to overlook the Titans too much, but especially their defense, I don't think is offensively they have some stuff going on, but defensively I think that's where they're really in rebuilding mode. So
I bet to say they have like Simmons and who else?
That's where I think that they did upgrade their corner. I think they got Snead and one other guy, but still, it's these are the types of games where the Jets really need to almost sweep the board throughout the regular season, and then hopefully you split your games with the good teams.
Yeah, exactly. It's a year where, like, if it's not this year, I think we have the 5th easiest schedule right now. In the NFL, and obviously it's going to change. It's just going to fluctuate. But like, if not this year, when? Like, enough with the bullshit excuses. Like, oh, they come back from this week and bye weeks they're not good, and West Coast trips they're not good. Like, that's where Saleh has to step up, in my opinion. And there are some problems with him, like media, like however you feel about Saleh. One of my biggest problems with him is, like, in big games, the team does not show up, like, at all. That Jaguars game you're referencing against Trevor Lawrence on whatever night game that was, Thursday Night Football, that was dreadful. Yeah. Then the next week you lose to the Lions, and the next week you lose to the you no show in Miami. Last year Browns game, no show. It's like a lot of big situations. The Jets come out completely flat, which to me is on the head coach a little bit. So I think he needs to be a little bit less like quotey and rah-rah. And it seems like that's the track he took this year. Like you see him get interviewed by reporters and stuff, and he just looks like he's pissed off all the time. And I think he realized, like, hey, these people are not my friends. And now he's treating them like they kind of deserve to be treated at times. So hopefully he can get this team out to a quicker or to show up in these games. Like, you can't lose to the Tennessee Titans if you're trying to win the AFC East. I think we're both going to agree they win this game. Yeah. Okay, so we got 1-1. This next game, again, another one. I don't love that it's Thursday Night Football. I don't love the fact that the Jets play, 3 games in 10 days or 3 days in 11 days, whatever exactly it is. But with that being said, Thursday night football, it's typically very heavily favored towards the home team because you don't have to travel. And with that being said, like, where are the Pats even remotely close to as good as the Jets? Like, quarterback, no. Running back, no. Even though I like Stevenson. Receiver, who are their receivers? Who are their tight ends? They have a decent defensive line, but like, who are their linebackers? I guess Duggar's back, but like, this is not a good team. They should smack the shit out of the Patriots on Thursday Night Football, and I'm expecting them to unleash some demons on them and hopefully just beat them 38-3 or something like, or 38-0. Screw giving them 3 points, but I think this is a win for the Jets, even though I don't love the fact that home opener Thursday Night Football on week 3. But
yeah, I agree. I think the Patriots are going to be pretty bad this year. I know they already were. I just don't see them being much better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we got 2-1 right now. Next game, the return of Zach Wilson, Bo Nix, Jarrett Stidham, and it's a funny thing too. Like, you're just talking about it before. Like, when you look at these schedules, you really want to, like, look at like the quarterbacks. Like, which quarterbacks are you playing against? And in years past, like, we've gotten so screwed with the schedule and how hard it was. Like last year, you start with the Bills, you go to the Cowboys, you get the Chiefs, you get the Eagles. The year prior, it's the Bengals, the Steelers, the Ravens. It's like, what is the Browns? Like, what the hell is going on here? This year, the schedule looks much easier. And again, the quarterbacks, like this stretch of quarterbacks, Will Levis to a rookie quarterback in Drake May, to Jared Stidham or Bo Nix, most likely for the Broncos. This is, again, unequivocally a game that you cannot lose. And I know people are like, oh, well, a little bit of a hangover, like they won 2 in a row. Are they going to look over this game against the Broncos? Like, absolutely not, right? Considering Sean Payton, considering Rodgers, firing back at Sean Payton last year. Like, I'm sure that Hackett and Rodgers are going to want to shit on the Broncos too. And I think they do. Like, this should not be and obviously anything can happen in any week, right? But this should not be a game we're sweating over. This should be a 2-score game, in my opinion, back to back, even back to back 2-score games. And I'm with you that maybe the Titans are being a little bit overlooked right now. Like I think they'll be okay. 7-8 win team, maybe. But I think New England's a bottom feeder. I think the Denver Broncos are a bottom feeder, and we need to kind of dominate them in these games. So I would say 3-1 at this point with Denver coming up.
Yeah, I agree. And I also wrote out my whole prediction here. So we'll go through game by game. But yep, I have 3-1 here. Okay.
Minnesota, you fly across the pond, 9:30 a.m. Revenge of Sam Darnold. They got Addison. They have JJ, but fortunately their strength is also our strength. So it's not something where like, hey, man, this team can really dominate us just in this one aspect of the game. Like, yeah, they'll get their catches. Justin Jefferson will get his 50, 60, 70, even maybe of 100 yards or whatever. And we'll see how much Sauce actually travels. So hopefully he doesn't have that many yards, but this is another game where like they lost Hunter, right? Kendricks isn't on that defense anymore. Like, I can't really name any good players on that defense. Their offense is their receivers, but their tight end, they have Hawkinson, right? They have Hawkinson now. So they have Hawkinson, they have JJ, they have Jordan Addison, but that's about it on that team. I don't think the offensive line's great. I don't think there's really nothing to write home about tight end, nothing at running back, not much on the defense. So this is another game, again, like win it 4-1 at this point, right?
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, London games are interesting because it's a neutral site, which I think is good for the road team because, one of your road games isn't a true road game. Mm-hmm. I see the Jets winning this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So now moving on, and I'm not sure what you're thinking about with the schedule. I think at the minimum to win the AFC East, you have to go 4-2 in the division, right? Like, there's absolutely no world you could lose to the Pats. And really, like, I can see the Jets going 5-1. Why can't we sweep the Bills? Like, we've almost we've beaten the Bills with Zach Wilson and corpses of other quarterbacks. Like, can we not go to Buffalo and beat them as well? But
I'm curious to see how this Bills team does because I mean they lost a lot this offseason. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. I mean, Stephon Diggs was that whole passing game, and they have some guys to replace them, but their receiver group right now: Shakir, Samuel, Keon Coleman, MVS, Mac Hollins.
Dude, straight disrespect to Trace.
Tight ends are good. Tight ends are good, but he's so far down the depth chart. I'm looking at. I didn't even see him. KJ
they brought in like they just brought in a bunch of like receiver 4s. Like that was their not even receiver 2s. Like receiver maybe not even 3s. Like legitimately. And on most like solid receiver cores, I think their best receiver is receiver 4, right? And Coleman maybe a 3 at the best. Like I don't know what they're doing. They lost Poyer, they lost Tre'Davious White.
Their safety duo that anchored them for so long.
Yeah, Hyde might retire. Tremaine Edmonds is gone. They still have Milano. They still have some good defensive linemen. Like they're a solid defense still, but. I at home Monday Night Football. Now, listen, at the end of the day, like you win 4 in a row in this scenario. Could this be, maybe a little bit of a letdown, possibly, but I'll do the home thing with the Bills. They win this game. They're 5-1 at this point going into Pittsburgh at night. This is a game where obviously well-coached team, tough spot to play in Pittsburgh. They're a good running team. I think if the Jets are going to struggle anywhere in this defense, it's going to be against the ground game. Again, easily a game. I think they probably should win this game because it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. We outdueled them at quarterback. They got a decent running back core. I'm not sure about their offensive line this year. Their receivers are Who are their number 1 and 2? Because they lost Deontay Johnson still? No, he got traded, right?
No, he's on Carolina.
Yeah, Pickens. They got Roman Wilson.
I just pulled up their depth chart, but wow, Van Jefferson is in the starting trio.
Yeah, it's him, Roman Wilson, and Pickett, and what's his name, right? So like,
yeah,
listen. There's always that one game a year that you're not supposed to lose that you lose. I'll say they lose this game just because
I have
one
that
of these
as well.
games. Okay,
that's just what the Steelers do. I mean, they're going to win 9 games somehow, even though they've no right to. So at home, prime time. This feels like one that they'll lose.
But they could easily win as well, right? Like we'll go back, and we'll give like more of our realistic, and then
you just have to give them some losses somewhere. Exactly, they're going to lose games that they're supposed to win.
Exactly. Okay, so this point 5-2. Now Joe and his buddies are driving up to New England on Saturday. Gonna have a good time. So I'll be in New England for this game most likely. Sweep them, right? Like there's no way you should lose to a team that's probably gonna have 4 or 5 wins this year. They don't have anything on offense. They suck. They suck. So there's really not much to talk about. I go there, they blow them out 38-0. I will still talk basically zero shit to Pats fans because this has been a year run of the Jets being better. I'm not going to be that guy. That I don't want to get jumped or anything like that. So they win here. So at this point, we're 6-2.
Yeah.
6-2. Texans, again, another game that I believe that they could win. They shit on them last year. CJ Stroud was looking like a really hot quarterback the entire year. He came in to play the Jets and looked like garbage, and we blew them out with Zach Wilson. This is a game where, again, I think you should win, but just based on like, hey, they're going to lose some games. Say they lose the Texans game, even though I easily think they could win it.
Yeah, I have the loss here too. So
okay,
that puts them at 6-3. And again, like saying they'll lose any game isn't saying they're worse than that team.
No,
or that they can't win it. It's just they're not going 17-0. They're not winning 16, 15, maybe 14. But no, like you got to lose some games. So
we'll talk about it later. Like again, we'll talk about like, okay, Pittsburgh, they're a better team than the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? I believe right now that they're a better team than the Texans, but we're trying to be semi-realistic and like, hey, teams have bad games. It happens.
It is a very good team, though. I'm curious to see how good they end up being. With the weapons they have now, Stroud taking a leap, adding Hunter to that defense. Like this is a great team. So I think they're on a similar level with the Jets, or they could be. So
at this point,
to Houston.
At this point, 6-3, right? Cardinals away. They, I think Murray is he's a decent quarterback. Like you got they have Marquise Brown now and Marvin Harrison Jr. Are there one? No, Marquise Brown is actually on the Chiefs now, right? So I don't know who their 2 is right now, the Cardinals, but
I'm gonna pull it up.
John Connor, tight ends.
Michael
I don't
Wilson,
know.
Greg Dortch, tight end. Trey McBride had a pretty good year last year.
Okay.
Not a lot on defense. I mean, this is a team that should be better than they were last year because Murray's a good quarterback, and they were better once they had him. But playing on the road, cross country, not easy. But again, a team I think the Jets are clearly better than. I think they're going to win this. The thing about having a great quarterback, and this is what Jets fans will get used to if we have Aaron Rodgers, is that playing on the road doesn't matter as much. Like with this team. Not having a great quarterback, playing on the road is a death sentence. The Jets win 1 or 2 road games a year because if you don't have someone who could confidently lead the offense at the line of scrimmage against a road crowd, that's what makes playing on the road hard. But if you have a great quarterback, it stabilizes home and road a lot more. And that's the key to being a great team is winning those road games. So I think as we go throughout the schedule, we're going to give the Jets a lot more road wins that in previous years you might say, all right, we're on the road, we're going to lose that game.
And I think like the quarterback like raises your floor too, where like in years past, like, even if we were like a really good team, it's like, hey, because we have Zach Wilson, we could lose to the Cardinals, we could lose to New England, but like this year with Rodgers, like I think we could lose to decent teams. Again, like the Steelers, maybe the Colts, we could talk about in a little bit. Like they can lose to 7, 8, 9 win teams. Do I think they're going to lose to teams who have like 4, 5, 6 wins? I don't. But road trip, whatever it is, I think they win here 7-3, right? Indy, I think this is a game where, yeah, it could be a little bit tough, maybe Jonathan Taylor running the ball on us, all that stuff. But because I gave them like 2 questionable losses with Pittsburgh and Houston, I can't see them losing another game they should win on primetime. Like, okay, now they lost 1 primetime game in Pittsburgh. Now they lost another primetime game
we gave them
against
3 primetime
Houston
losses already. So this
Yeah,
one
yeah.
splits it.
Exactly. So the Colts, Anthony Richardson, I think they could be okay. Do I think they're going to lose them at home? I don't. So I think going into the bye week at 8-3 is what you should expect. I think at the bare minimum here, you need to be 7-4, right? Before this point. And then at the end, you hope to at least 4-2. But at this point, 8-3, the rest of the schedule is a little bit more difficult. So really get a head start here, maybe even 9-2, and then just win like at least 3 games down the stretch, split them. So 8-3 in agreement and going into the bye week.
Yep, that's what I got. And yeah, I agree 7 wins is a good target because like provided they're healthy, if they get injured, like it could go as far off the rails as possible. Yeah. But provided they're healthy, how are they losing 5 games out of these first 11? Like what could be the issue with the team that causes 5 losses with this roster?
Even 4. Like we had 3 losses there. We're giving the Niners the game, which I don't think we have to give the Niners the game. I think the Jets could easily win that game. Yeah. We're giving Pittsburgh the game. They're a better team than Pittsburgh. We're giving Houston the game, and I think they're, I think it's arguable who's better there, but they beat them last year with, they beat them because of the defense. They didn't beat them because of the offense. Now you're only multiplying it because they're going to have the offense is going to go from 28th, 29th, 30th, 32nd that it was last year, even just to jump up to 16 to middle of the pack. Like, and Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson was good in that game, but he's not Rodgers. Like, so I think they probably should win that game. But again, just for sake of not being homers here, 8-3. Okay. Then moving on to after the bye week, Seattle at home, Geno, Kenneth Walker, DK, Tyler Lockett. They have no Quandre, no Jamal Adams return. Tyreek Woolen, I think he still is better than Sauce Gardner. He really put up a great year last year, Nani. I don't know if you saw how many good plays he had, but I think that, I think they take this game. I don't think the Seahawks are very good. Geno Smith had like a blow up year, but he kind of returned back to earth this year. I don't think they're anything to write home about. I don't think they're a bad team. I don't think they're the Pats level, the Broncos level, or anything like that. I think they're probably a 6 to 8 win team. But you take this after a bye week, and like last year they came out of the bye week super slow. And this is again one of my problems with Saleh is like you have a whole 2 weeks to prepare for, the Giants, and then that was one of the ugliest games I've ever seen. So we do have a question after the bye for the Jets. So that's the thing that makes me a little bit nervous about it. But in my opinion, you take this game. It's 9-3.
Yeah, I agree. Seattle coming cross country. They don't have the greatest defense. I think Jets take care of business. 9-3.
Okay. At Miami, are we doing the home and home thing? I don't know if you're willing to do the home and home thing with Miami, but you go to Miami. Now the benefit of it is that the biggest benefit of the schedule is the Dolphins games. Both Dolphins games where they are is the biggest part of this entire schedule.
Yeah, I agree. Jets will be, having some time to build chemistry. And I also like what you're getting here. 2 games down south within your last 5. Yep. That definitely takes off some of the potential cold weather that you could face. And you do still get the Buffalo game here late, but you're going to get 2 good weather games back to back here, which is for an old team. A lot of guys who want to keep healthy. That's nice, but I am going to give this one to Miami. And I sometimes I have the hunch to do some unique things in here, not just be like, all right, you guys have the road game, the home game, but just for the sake of keeping this moving, just being realistic, I'll give Miami this. Yeah, so I am going to give the Jets the last one.
9-4.
So I'm going to give them the split here, 9-4.
Okay, 9-4. And I didn't think about to ask you this. Well, I pulled it up. I forgot to ask you, but Andrew Yale says, "How do you guys feel about the late bye?" And I guess I'll throw it into the question as well. Plus the Jets denying the bye week after they go to London. What are your thoughts about not taking that bye week? What would that be? Week 6 versus getting it week 12. To me personally, like the later the bye, the better.
Yeah, I was looking back through history, and the last time they had a bye this late was 1990. So it's been a long time since they had it this late. But I forget that there was someone last year who played a London game and they didn't take the bye, and I think they won the next game anyway. So I don't think
Or
it
the
necessarily
Packers did it to
matters.
us 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Jacksonville. Yeah, Jacksonville. Yeah, that's who it was. I pulled it up now. They played back London games, came right back with no bye, and blew out the
Yeah.
Colts. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it matters as much as people think it does,
Dude. I don't think
Yeah.
it does either. I think the whole travel thing, like, and I'm not, and maybe I'm Joe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the couch right now with the Cheetos and stuff, but like, these guys are elite athletes. Are we really talking about like airplane fatigue and time changes that much? Like, I get it affects you a little bit, but is it going to change you from losing a game because you're a little bit more tired? You're used to playing a game at 1 and now it's 10 o'clock. Like, I think it matters to some effect, but I do think people really, really overestimate travel and traveling to London. It's like a 6.5 hour plane ride. You land there, you're there for a week. Like, is it really that big of a deal? Then you fly back on Monday. You have a whole week to get used to it again. It's like a couple hour time difference. Now, I do wish that after the London game, they were playing, let's say, the Seahawks, the Pats, the Broncos, instead of playing the Bills on Monday Night Football. Now, I do like the fact that you get that extra days of rest to readjust and stuff like that. But I rather, let's say, the Colts on Monday Night Football than the Bills. But nonetheless, I do think people really, really overrate the travel stuff. Like, I don't know, man. Like, and I'm not an elite athlete or anything like that, but like, I've flew to places with bigger time differences and I feel fine the next day. Like, I don't get that whole discussion so much, but maybe I'm crazy.
Yeah, the extra day is nice, but in terms of the Bills, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe that is the type of team you want to play coming off a London game. I'm not super high in this Bills roster the way it's shaped up right now.
No, and especially how we've played them in the past. Like, we could have beaten them, both years or the last 3 years, we could have beat them in Buffalo. Like, they didn't, maybe they blew us out one time in Buffalo, but even that Mike White game where he got speared and stuff, like, we were in that game, we were CJ Mosley jumping over the line in 4th and 1 from winning that game, so who's to say we can't beat them? But at the point we're at week 15 right now, 9-4, right? Now this is me flying to Jacksonville because I will be I'm again 99% sure I'll be in Jacksonville. Am I going to see a victory there, Nania, or do you think they're going to lose this game on the road to the Jags?
I'm giving this one to the Jets. Could be a tough game. Back-to-back 9-win seasons. I think they underachieved last year, but I'm going to give this one to the Jets.
Okay. Yeah, I think, like, again, just for the sake of like being somewhat fair, whether it be this game or the next game against the Rams, like, go 1-1 here, at least, like, split these games. So I'll say win in Jacksonville because I'm there. Now you're 10-4 next week. Rams, playoff team last year. I think they're decent. Maybe this is one of the letdowns before you're looking on to the Bills and the Dolphins. So I'll say win in Jacksonville, loss to the Rams. And at that point you are, what is it? Is it 10-5?
Yeah, 10-5. I gave them the win against the Rams here. So I have them at 11-4, but maybe this next game is where we differ. I am giving them the Bills loss in Buffalo. I don't feel great about it, but this is my balancer here.
Yeah.
Putting them at 11-5. Do you have the win here?
No, I'll say loss here too. And I think I'm trying to be as fair as I possibly can. 10-6 at this point, and then Monday Night Football, Saturday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, whatever it is, Miami, you beat them, and then you finish the season 11-6. If I but that's honestly my head talking. Like, are we really going to lose to the Rams? Are we really going to lose to the Steelers? Like, are you sure? Like, maybe one of those games, but like my heart is saying more 12-5. Like, that's my heart's saying 12-5. My head's like be somewhat cautious, somewhat optimistic. You don't want to seem like a Jets homer, so predict 11-6. But like, again, the Rams, the Steelers, like, I could see them maybe losing one of those games, but both of those games would be a letdown. But John says the Rams are much better than you think. I just said it. Like, I think people are overlooking the Rams. They're a playoff team. I think they'll be. No Donald. I think they'll still be an 8, 9, 10-win team. But again, the Jets are a better team. The Jets are a better team than the Steelers. So I think they could lose, again, Hart says they lose one of these games, not both of them. Head's telling me to just do both.
Rams defense this is a pretty bad defense.
Go ahead, name off
overrating. I don't know if anyone knows any of these people.
Okay.
I mean, with no Donald, their defensive tackles are Bobby Brown III and Kobe Turner. Their edges they got Jared Verse in the first round this year. Both of their edges are rookies. Braden Fisk, corners, Darius Williams, Tre'Davious White, who's washed up. Safeties, Cameron Curl, Russ Yeast.
Solid.
So, I don't know. I'm losing Aaron Donald to go defensive tackle.
No, Nania, screw it. Screw it. Jets beat the Rams to 12-5. That's the prediction. They're not going to lose to the Rams.
We're so used to like talking ourselves down from this. Like, I mean, my yearly prediction is usually 9-10 wins. I've never been at 12, but I don't know. Like, our brains justified this time around that those years we should have been smarter. You just don't want to say like this is a 5-6 win team.
Yeah.
You don't want to admit that. But you look at this team and look, if injuries strike, it could all go off the rails. But none of us can predict that. But if they don't, you look at this team, it is objectively good enough to win 12 games. It's not like a homer take to say that. And there's a lot of stuff supporting that. Like there's the ESPN ranking of like their analytics guy or whatever.
Mike Clay.
Rosters. Yeah. He ranked all the rosters in the league based on every single position group, rating all of them. Jets were number 2 behind the Niners. So it's the talent on paper is good enough to win this many games. And I think Jets fans should be confident enough to make those schedule predictions this year. Go say 11 wins, 12 wins. Look at your schedule and say, I see a good 11, 12 wins for my team here. You're allowed to say it this year.
What if they beat the Niners week 1? And then it's 13 wins. Like, it's possible. What if they beat the Steelers too and they have 4? Like, I'm not going to say I would bet on 14 wins or 13 wins, but is it unrealistic to think that they could, again, just based on strength of schedule or just based on betting favorites, if that's how it plays out and maybe you win one you're not supposed to and you lose one you're not supposed to, they're favored in 14 games this year.
Yeah.
So why can't they win 13 or 14 games? Again, I wouldn't bet on it. My gut is saying more in the 11, 12 win range for the Jets, or maybe even 10 on the low side. Like 10 is a bad year. With this schedule, 10, like 7, losing to 7 of these teams is not good. Like we don't play a gauntlet of, we're not playing the AFC North and the Bengals and we're playing the Steelers. We're not playing the Browns and the Ravens. Like,
I mean, so we have the AFC South and the NFC West, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like AFC North is tougher. Than the NFC, I think what would you put? I'd say NFC East is probably tougher than the West. So, I mean, it's really not.
Yeah.
And they have the last place scheduled. They get the Broncos and who they get out of those 2 games?
What, last
Broncos
year?
And based on being last place, like what are the games they get from that? Oh, they get Minnesota, which I think is a very winnable game. Denver, and then the AFC North game is Pittsburgh. So those are, oh no, they're 3rd place. Still, like those are, winnable games there as well.
Yeah, it's just like even like 10. Like people talk about 10 wins. If they win 10 games this year, again, it's a disappointment to me. Like considering their schedule, like last year, and I'm not even trying to be like, I get it's Monday morning quarterbacking, but it is what it is. You plug in Tyrod to the first Pats game, the Falcons game, the Raiders game, we win those. Like there's no question in my mind we win those games with Tyrod Taylor. So if we're a 10-win team with Tyrod Taylor last year, and all we did this year, I don't know if you heard, but we added Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, Mike Williams, a guy named Aaron Rodgers to the team. Like 10 wins is disappointing to me. No, so you bagged out a little bit there.
Yeah. I was saying Hassan Reddick, but he balances out guys.
But like it's
nonetheless.
In my opinion, you're a better team than last year. And that's, we're not talking about just the quarterback, but then you also consider Aaron Rod or Zach Wilson to Aaron Rodgers or Tim Boyle to Aaron Rodgers. 10 wins is a disappointment. I think 11 wins is the minimum you need to win the AFC East. So get those 11 wins. And hey, in a world where we actually kind of almost like supersede the expectations, like win 12, 13 games and get the freaking first seed in the playoffs. Now, obviously, again, would I bet on that? Not necessarily, but like I want a home playoff game. Nani, like that's the goal. Obviously, the main goal is win the Super Bowl and all that stuff. But like for the end of the season, obviously get the bye week sitting pretty, wild card weekend, then divisional game. But like I want to go to a playoff game at MetLife so bad this year. So as long as they're in that top, you have to be in the top 4, right? No, it's the first week is Win the division, you get that home playoff game, and then you're hosting, I don't know, whatever team it is. Like that stadium is going to be absolutely rocking. So, again, Heart says 12-5. Even my head says 12-5 at this point. Fuck, I'm not even gonna preface it with that. It is what it is. But let's get to some more comments, and then we'll jump off here. What time does the next game start? Is it 8:30 or 8?
8:30.
Yeah. 8:30. Okay, yeah. We're gonna get out of here in a second anyway. But I'll see some comments while we're going through the schedule. Okay, hold on. What's up, Jets family? To Vic, what's going on? Somebody said, so the injury is on Rodgers or the play? It was on Rodgers. It was a cut block. Garrett Wilson's open on a slant, and Rodgers just double clutches it. That was on Rodgers. But let's see. 3 games out of the 10 days is tough. We're going against lower end quarterbacks again, and like we used to be afraid of other teams on the schedule. I think at this point, people are looking at the Jets and like, oh shit, that's a tough game with Aaron Rodgers and a top 1, 2, 3 defense in the league. So, not to be negative, but when are we ever healthy? It's not to be negative. Like, you are right. We have been historically injured. But with that being said, and this is what I was thinking last year, Nania, like it can't happen again to the Jets. There's no way it's going to happen again. We've had so much bad luck. Every team turns it around. The Red Sox, the Cubs, the Knicks. Well, we still have a long way to go, but like the Knicks are turning around. The Rangers are in the final or in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like every team does it. This is the Jets year. Obviously, what happened. But it can't happen in 2 years in a row, right? Like we're going to, and even with the injuries, like we're better prepared for injuries because last year, Joe Douglas's plan was to throw a 4th round injured and raw, developmental tackle at the offensive line. This year was signing a stud left tackle, a stud right tackle, a decent left guard. So like their contingency plans are better for this year as well. As long as 8 doesn't go down, I think we'll be pretty much fine. So knock on wood here. I don't like talking about injuries, but it has to turn around eventually, right? Just like law of averages. I don't know.
You would think, but the best argument in favor of it is what you just said, is just rattling off all the other teams that for a long time were in this exact same position, and eventually, like it just clicks for you. It happened to happened to a lot of teams in the past decade and across all sports. So you would think that the Jets at some point have to join them.
12 wins is a possible, but definitely 99th percentile outcome requiring lots of favorable It's not though, because the Jets are a lot better. Like they're better than a lot of these teams. If it was 99th percentile and having to depend on a lot of favorable variance, then they wouldn't be favored in 14 games. It's 12 wins is not, it's something that we don't do a lot because we've sucked so bad, but with an easy schedule with Aaron Rodgers and a top 3 defense, 12 wins is not out of the realm of possibility. Like look at the Packers and their wins over the years where they had Rodgers. Like, I don't know if you could pull it up, Nani, on your screen, but like how many times did they get 11, 12, 13? It's all about the quarterback, and we have a quarterback. And we got kind of 2 back-to-back comments. Like Stafford is probably a better quarterback than Rodgers at this stage. I'm not going to agree with that at all. Stafford was injured last year as well, and he's had some problems with his shoulder. I think Rodgers is the better quarterback when he comes back. Maybe I'm being biased there, but Rodgers at his peak, even Rodgers last time we saw him healthy was better than Stafford. So I guess unless you're just expecting him to just be so much worse, which I don't think so. But like Rams offense makes me nervous. Puka Nacua. Obviously you got Cooper Kupp. Okay. But again, you're playing into our strength. Kyron Williams, like, is he going to do it again in his second year? I don't know. I'm not saying they make me nervous. The Rams. I'm more nervous about the Dolphins offense than the Rams. But let's see. If we have good health, we could be really, great show. So I can go Jets. We should be a lot better this year. I see 9 wins. Ooh, Jay, why 9 wins? Like, I don't know, man. I think you might just be a pessimistic Jets fan at that point. I cannot wait to be an obnoxious Jets fan. If we go on a 5-game winning streak, this fan base is going to erupt. We nearly lost our minds on a 3-game win streak, sneakers and boots. And then you have Elijah Moore, who like I'm on the tarmac, like waiting to take off and stuff. And Elijah Moore's tweeting out, he wants his targets and Matthew 3:16, don't fear this man. Like all this stupid shit he would tweet. It was a little bit unfortunate, but let's see. Jay says we need a solid D tackle to stop running games, and I'm concerned about covering tight ends like Kittle with our linebackers. I don't know, man. Like it's we're asking for quite a lot here. Like we have a top 3 inside linebacker duo in the entire league, right? Like
I think that is like a testament to this team. Like the fact that we're worried about like how are we going to stop the running game? How are we going to cover tight ends? Like we're past who's our quarterback, who's blocking the quarterback, who's catching the passes. And we're focused on things that are far down the list. Like, not that these things don't matter, but Like, think about what the holes are now versus 3 years ago.
And like Jay, like
that
I'm
should
just trying to
tell
be
you
straight.
where they're
I'm
at.
trying to be straight. I'm trying to be straight up here. Like with this comment, it's like we're worried about the linebackers, but it's not like we have David Harris anymore, who's like slow. It's like, and maybe this is just me, maybe forgetting something off the top of my head, but I'm only taking like Greenlaw and Warner over our duo. Like, is there another duo in the NFL you're going to take over Quincy Williams and Mosley other than the one in San Fran right now? Because I think you could have argued Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen and with the Ravens, but now Patrick Queen is gone, right? So I don't know who his replacement is. So I think the Jets probably have on defense, they have a top 3 D tackle. They have good edge rushers. They have a top 5 edge rusher in Hassan Reddick. They have JJ, who's solid. You have the top trio of corners in the entire league, in my opinion. You have a one of the best top 3 at the minimum, in my opinion, inside linebacker duos. Your safeties are okay. So like, why are we so worried about? Yeah, George Kittle's gonna have his, like, George Kittle also will have, trust me, I had him on fantasy. He'll have games where he has 3 catches for 12 yards too. Like, he's not been as effective in recent years as he has been, 4 years ago. But are you taking any other duos other than the guys in San Fran over the Jets?
Yeah, I'd have to look at it. I mean, you mentioned the Baltimore guys, but Queen left. I'd have to look at all the duos on paper.
Yeah.
But the Niners are the only one that comes to mind. And
exactly
right now, linebacker is not strong in the league. It's not like 10, 15 years ago where there were so many superstars you could name. So the fact that the Jets have 2 Pro Bowl caliber guys is an advantage over a lot of other teams. Not a lot of teams would label it as a strength at all, let alone to that extent.
Yeah. CJ Mosley's horrible in coverage. I would say he's okay in coverage. Like, I think you are kind of forgetting the past linebackers we've had of like EJ Henderson, and even David Harris was like terrible in coverage. Neville Hewitt. Like, we've had guys who are I want there to be like, I want there to be more of a defined like gray area. Like, you could say somebody's okay. Like, somebody doesn't have to be terrible or great. Like, CJ Mosley's okay in coverage. He's not great, but if he caught his interceptions last year, he probably has 5 or 6 picks.
A whole different perception. I mean,
and then you're talking about him like, he's great in
but
coverage.
If he did catch like 2 or 3 of those, suddenly the perception is he's elite in coverage.
Yeah, exactly. And I would still, at that point, people would say he's elite. I'd say, oh no, he's okay, and he just was in advantageous positions. But I don't know. I'm not gonna say horrible. Let's see. We'll do 2 more really quickly because I gotta jump off. But aside from injuries and Hackett, what do you think? Yeah, so Stiggers and boots. Like, I said, that's the 2 biggest variables is injuries and I wouldn't say Hackett. I would say coaching in general. If you, my third, and you probably have the same answer, injuries, Hackett, and I would say run defense would be like the biggest like downfalls of this team. But I don't see it being like such a big variable where our run defense takes us from 12 wins to 9 wins or something like that. Like, it might lose us a game, the run defense. But I would say that's the third. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd put that up there. I actually did an article on this recently. Like, what are the top things that could hold them back outside of they get injured? And, you can toss coaching onto that. So I'd say run defense is up there. Like, are there a few close games where maybe they get like, I don't think run defense is going to be so bad to where it costs them their whole season. But, close games determine a lot in the league. Like, look at how the Vikings a couple years ago, 13 wins, they had no business winning because they won every close game. You got to win your close game. So will the Jets run defense? Will there be a few close games that they lose because they can't stop a run at the end because they're soft up the middle? So I would put that up there. I would say, is Mike Williams not being who we want him to be? Because if that's the case, then you're looking at the receiver group not being too much different than it was last year. I mean, hopefully Corley is good, but he is a 3rd round rookie with 11 guys picked over him. So I would say put Mike Williams, him not being himself up there. And receivers a weakness. Does that hold the offense back? And then on top of that, I would say, does Aaron Rodgers underwhelm? And I don't think this will happen. Like we talked about, I think he's going to be great, but we're, 40 years old, coming off an Achilles. You can't rule out, maybe he's just an okay quarterback. I would just say, don't rule it out. I don't think it's going to happen, but if there's anything outside of injuries that could hold them back, I would say it's the possibility of a decline from him.
I'm going to rapid fire these, but not to bring up injuries, but who are some indispensable guys? Rodgers, Garrett, jump out, Quinn into. I would agree. In terms of indispensable, like Reed, we saw it last year. We saw both the corners. We still beat the Eagles. So I don't think anybody like Sauce. I would still say Sauce. Sauce is, we got lucky with the Eagles. Maybe like you can't necessarily scheme
over the long run. It would hurt.
Yeah, for
that was a
sure.
great job holding up that one game, but you would feel that if he was out a long time.
Yeah, I would say those are the big three. Like I would say, and like people don't want to hear this, but I think Conklin being out would be a big deal. Like he's a solid receiving tight end, and past that you have pretty much nothing proven. But JFM and Q at D tackle, JJ Redick at the end would have been. I wanted to keep JFM to put him at D tackle. JE again, and like obviously a little bit more Monday morning quarterbacking because the Jets at the time they signed Kinlaw could not have known that they were going to get Redick to then get rid of JFM. Like that was a domino effect that happened, but JFM is making $7.5 million and Kinlaw is making about $7 million. I'd much rather have JFM than Kinlaw on this team. I think that's their biggest flub of the offseason, but nonetheless, Quincy Williams is another one. Great show, fellas. Appreciate that. Sneakers and Boots. I'll see you next week, Sneakers and Boots. And apparently you're going to Jacksonville, so I might see you there as well. Chad says, and we'll make this the last question, what games you're going to this year? You said Arizona home opener, right? And then play it by ear. That was kind of your answer?
Yeah, those are the two I would pretty much lock in at this point. Beyond that, I mean, maybe Jacksonville I am considering as well. It's not too far of a drive for me. From NC,
how far of a drive?
It's like 5.5 hours. So
okay,
I've done much longer than that. We drove to Cleveland last year for the Knicks game. So that's
okay. So just understand the fact that you just said a 5.5 hour drive is child's play, and I will be there. If you're not there, Nania, I will be upset. I'm not gonna lie that if you're saying it's child's play and you don't show up, then I flew there and
December,
you can't come.
Gonna be nice there.
Oh, you're coming. Okay.
Count 80%. Let's say 80%.
Let's jack it up to like 90. Let's just come. Like why okay. you only live once, Nani. You got to hit all the stadiums.
All right, we're going to Jacksonville. We're going to Jacksonville.
JetX will be there. We need Sabo. We need Sabo there.
If we win, we're jumping in the pool.
Yeah. Oh, I might be in the pool before we win. I might be in there to start the game.
I'm not going to get caught in the pool if they're losing. They have to win first.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll see what happens, but we appreciate everybody listening. Nani will be back next month. Nani, anything you want to plug before you jump off? I know there's gonna be an article about Nick Bawden now. I'm sure that might come, but
I need some inspiration. It's been hard to come up with ideas recently. I mean, I thought I had a fun one today. I looked at all the reps that Tyron and Zahn Redick played last year. That was a cool thing to look back through. So check that out. I was proud of that. That was a really fun one to do.
I want to ask a follow-up question with that. And maybe I always do the top 25 with Kyle Smith. I'm hoping to get him back for that show. Just if I can get him back for one show a year, it has to be top 25. If you're and just in the top 25 and however you want to quantify it, Tyron Smith versus Redick, like who would be the higher player on your board right there? Because you have Tyron Smith, who in my I watched that game and Tyron Smith won that matchup in my opinion. Yeah. But Redick is healthier and a little bit younger. So who would you put above the other on like a top 25 ranking between those two guys? Like who's more valuable?
I would say clearly Tyron. If you're considering injuries, I think it's closer. But even then, I don't know, just among left tackles, like he's probably the guy right now. And Redick's really good, but he's not the best edge rusher in the way that I think Tyron Smith arguably is the best left tackle, or at least in that conversation. So I would say Tyron.
When he's healthy, I think there's I'm only taking I have to watch all their reps, so I don't want to like put my stamp on this. But the only guy I'm taking over him right now, healthy, is Trent Williams, right? Like, is there anybody else you're definitely taking over Tyron Smith when he's healthy? Like, he's still a force when he's healthy, dude. Like, he's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, like look at the article that I put out. Like, as good as you think Redick is, he looks like Jordan Jenkins against Tyron Smith. Not even Jordan Jenkins. Like, who's a terrible Jets edge rusher?
Henry Anderson.
It looks like he straight up did nothing against him. So
remember Henry Anderson's wife on Twitter? Like anything you put up positive about him, like retweet. Yeah. And then like I just noticed that after a while she just stopped doing stuff because he didn't do anything positive on the field. But Nani will be back next month for his monthly appearance. Sabo will be here next week. I appreciate everybody watching, and we will see you next week, or I'll see you next week. Go Knicks, I guess, for the Knicks fans out there. I can't say I'm rooting for you.
You don't have to say it. You don't have to say it. I know you're a Nets fan. You don't have to give the reluctant cheers. I wouldn't say that for the Nets. I'll just say that.
The thing about it too is like now the next series, it's almost like the Pats Giants Super Bowl, like Knicks Boston. Like who do you even root for in my shoes? I'm rooting for the West. Let's go West. I'll see you guys.